Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. And to begin our meeting, I will take the invocation myself, and then Jordan, would you lead us in a pledge? Our Father in heaven, we're grateful this night that we can come before thee to hold city council and do the business of the city. We're grateful at this time for the moisture that we've received. This is so needed in our state at this time. We're so very grateful. We're grateful for the blessings of prosperity in our city and the wonderful improvements that we've been able to see. We're grateful for those who work and sacrifice so that we can improve and make our city better. We pray this night that we'll have thy spirit and guidance as we do the business of the city, that we will have peace throughout our debate, and that we will find solutions that fit the needs of the city. And we say these things humbly in the name of thy Son, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
All right, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I appreciate the emphasis on justice.
Okay. I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, to begin this evening, we have a period of public comment. I don't see a lot of public here, but I will open it up for public comment. This is your chance to comment on any item that may be on the agenda or something you want to bring to our attention. Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment unless there were any online. Cassie, did you see any? Okay. Next, we have approval of minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes from past meetings. If everybody's had a chance to look over that, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes as stated here.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is someone here from Gilbert and Stewart. Okay, so I'm going to table this one until we can find the person who's going to do the report. All right, item number 6. Item number 5, by the way, is been pulled from our agenda. So we'll move on to item number 6. Proposed ordinance 2022-32, amending section 5.05 of the Syracuse City Code regarding business licensing. I don't see our economic development director here either. So, Brody, did you want to take this one, or do I need to put this one off?
Yeah, I don't know that there's actually much discussion that needs to take
Okay.
place. We've had our several or at least a couple discussions in the work sessions. If there are any questions, we can try to get those answered for you.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? We have discussed this before.
I think the main thing on this was to have a low impact
Mhm.
business license offered now, right?
Yes,
Look
and this does just
For
conform.
state mandate.
Yeah, this is per state mandate.
Aligns us with, I'd support. I'm
I'll take a motion then.
motion to approve proposed ordinance 2022-32.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 7 is a public hearing. Public hearing proposed resolution R 22-37, updating and amending the Syracuse City Consolidated Fee Schedule by adding low impact business licensing fee and fats, oils, and grease licenses or daily fines, not licenses. Any discussion?
Nope, this is pretty straightforward.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve proposed.
We have a public hearing that needs to
Oh,
open.
I'm sorry. I forgot. So let me open it up for public hearing first. If there's anyone who'd like to comment on the change in ordinance. Seeing none and none online, I will close public hearing. And now, since we already have a motion, I will go forward with that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. No, item number 8, authorize administration to execute the contract with the Craythorne Inc. for the install of a new road, utilities and parking lot for the BMX project. Robert.
Yes, so November 30th, we had a bid opening for this project and 6 bidders submitted bids. Low bidder was Craythorne in the amount of $1,035,122. And that's shown there in the packet with how it affects each of the budgets. This is something that is in the overall budget can handle. We've also shown a summary for how it fits into the overall total with future costs of land, lighting, and Rocky Mountain Power, restroom costs, and that sort of thing. So we are, well,
Any questions?
that's what we have.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So why did they come in so low when the rest of them were so close together, except the very last one?
I don't know.
I think the better question is to start, did you check to make sure there were no scope omissions?
Yeah, they meet all of the scope of the work. Craythorne has done work for Syracuse City before and has done a great job. I don't have a reason for why they
Crest is raising her hand.
bid lower.
I was there at the bid, my asked Brian this, what he said is that they are doing projects around, so they don't have to do a lot of their mobilization and stuff.
Transportation.
Did you
costs.
catch that on record? I can repeat it. So
Transportation costs.
Craythorne does work with other projects in the city, so it saves on mobilization costs because their crews are already here in the city.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a big fee.
All right, any other questions?
Nope.
I will take a motion.
I will move that we authorize administration to execute contract with Craythorne Inc. for the installation of the new road, utilities, and parking lot for the BMX Park project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That passes unanimous. Item number 9 is going to be taken in 4 parts. We have recently had a RFP for services for engineering and design services that randomly happen throughout the city. We took these in 4 different areas. We had various committees that reviewed the different sections of this contract. So I'm going to, Brody, are you going to present the findings of the various committees?
Sure. I'll give you a brief rundown. Most of you were involved with the reviews, so I feel that I don't need to go into too much detail, but there was a review committee on each category consisting of typically 5 or 6 people within the city who would be related, who would be working with these firms regularly, plus a few of you on each committee. Based on the review criteria, which included experience, cost, methodologies of how they go about doing business, things like that. There was a scoring system put together, and that scoring system was tallied, and the review committees met and put forth these recommendations for the council. One thing I will mention, the general terms of the contract. This is generally for 5 years. They would be firms that we could use now without having to do individual RFPs or try to get quotes every time we have even a small project. However, we felt that there needed to be a ceiling. So on any project that was more than 175,000, we would commit ourselves that we need to go out to bid anyway to make sure that we're getting the best value for our service. We have the ability, even if it's below that 175, to still, go out and get some additional pricing if we feel for whatever reason we're not getting the value from these firms. So we kind of have that door open still. But the intent is to use these firms as sort of our go-to people for these specialized services. Either party on these contracts can get out of the contract if they want with just a a 30-day notice. And the pricing that they submitted, they would be committing to that pricing for the first 2 years of the contract.
Okay. So to take the first one, resolution R 22-38 is for professional services of civil engineering and general civil engineering that would allow for a pool that included WCG, JUB, and Bowen Collins. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll take a motion for resolution R 22-38.
Motion to approve resolution R 22-38.
Second?
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Resolution R 22-39 is for professional services in which one is this? Environmental engineering services. And as selected by committee would be WCG, Horrocks, and JUB, and as part of that pool.
Motion to approve R 22-39.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Proposed resolution R 22-40 authorizes professional services for transportation and traffic services. This would include WCG as experts in that field.
Motion to approve R 22-40.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this last one is R 22-41 would be to approve professional services for Blue Line Designs for parks and landscape design. I will state at this point, since I'm not voting, I'm not going to do anything more than just state for the record that I am related to someone in Blue Line, but I had nothing to do with this review committee and have had no say in the matter. Any discussion?
Motion to approve resolution R 22-41.
Second?
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those pass unanimously. Item number 10, authorize execution of contract for City Creek construction for Emergency Operations Center Improvement Project. Brody.
Okay, so we received bids for the Emergency Operations Center project over the police station. We actually received, there were 2 bids submitted. However, one was automatically disqualified because they did not attend the mandatory pre-bid meeting. This pre-bid meeting is important because we do a walkthrough of the project and it gives them an idea of all the nuances and complexities that may be involved in the project so that they can give us a better number. And so that's why we have that. It's written in the bid documents and it's actually pretty common. And so we accepted the one bid from City Creek Construction. It came in at $681,848, and they are the apparent winner and who we would recommend for the project. There is one budgetary matter that we need to address, and I think maybe we had a little bit of miscommunication. In September, we brought to you a copy of the cost estimate for the construction, and the cost estimate was $688,000. And it just lays out, the line items for construction. That did not include design. At that point, we had already been through 90% of the design, and we had awarded that contract. However, when we amended the budget for the upgraded backup power generator, we amended it to 688, but that would include the design. And so what we intended was 688 was for construction, but when we actually brought it to you for adoption or amendment of the budget, the line item was for the whole project, including design. So
We're 31K short.
so we were short. The total amount that we were short was about 40,848. And so we're just asking that if we approve the project tonight, that we do it with that acknowledgement and that we would adjust the budget in an upcoming budget hearing.
There was also a grant, right? That portion of grant was for, is that already approved then?
So the grant would be, if we were to add design and the contract, 681 on top of design. And then, yes, we got a $21,000 grant to help pay for some of that. So we would still, in the budget, it would still be the full, the full amount. We would just show a revenue of the grant coming in to offset it in the budget on the revenue side.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to authorize execution of the contract with City Creek Construction for the EOC improvement project, as well as make the budget updates. Can we do a budget without a public hearing?
You can make an acknowledgement that we would amend it in the upcoming
Okay.
budget.
With that acknowledgement.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 11, authorize mayor to execute agreement with Utah Department of Transportation for Transportation Alternative Program funding. Who was going to handle this?
Is this one yours, Robert?
Sorry, we were talking about stuff.
We were coordinating snow clearing. All right, council. So last year, the staff applied for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant, and we received that grant. So this was last year's grant. It's taken a while to actually get the contract in place. So alternative transportation is basically your non-motorized. So a lot of this fits really well with trails. So we were awarded this for the the trail along Gentile, which would complete a section of trail between, so it'd be on the north side of Gentile between 2000 West and the Fields Avenue. There is one section that a development will be doing, but this will just complete that section that the city would be responsible to do. So the funding would allow for that to be completed. And this is the contract that's in the packet. The total project cost is $300,000, where the grant would be 50% of that, because we have a 50% match. So $150,000 grant goes toward a trail. So.
Okay.
Great.
Any other discussion? I'll take a motion.
Motion to authorize the mayor to execute the agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation for the TAP funding.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 12, authorize the mayor to execute agreement with Weber Basin Water Conservancy District for the purchase and use of untreated water. Robert.
Yeah, so council, each year we tally up the amount of water that developers have paid for the fee in lieu. Now, as you recall, the ordinance states that any development that comes in has to bring at least 2/3 worth of the secondary water in water shares. And if they can prove that they don't have water that was with the land, that was tied with the land, and they are unable to purchase shares out there on the market, that they can use this option of fee in lieu. So just 1/3 of the amount of water for the development. So we've collected water throughout, or money for water throughout the last 12 months. And we just tallied that up. That'd be 227.3 acre feet of secondary water that we've collected money for already from developers. Weber Basin has drafted a contract that if the council here approves this, then it can go to Weber Basin's board at their next board meeting for approval, that we can actually get this water for our next water season.
So I have a question. Why is it that we can do that by the water, but the developer cannot? Is it just that it's tied to specific land, and if they don't have access to, if there are no shares with that land, they have no other options to buy it.
So, yeah, Weber Basin has a contract. They contract with municipalities and to provide wholesale water to our municipality. They don't contract with individual developers because a developer will come and then go, and perpetually Weber Basin can't just keep a developer on, under contract with them for water. So they work it through a municipality.
So the farmers don't have to sell the water with the land, and a lot of them will retain it just to use for retirement purposes. Yeah.
So
There's that.
one thing that I do want to bring up that came up in the discussion for preparing this item is that Weber Basin has stated that this will be the last time they will sell District 3 water shares. There will be no more of that, which means that all future water is going to be even more expensive. But the other thing that I learned in this preparation that I think is needs council consideration is that we've learned that Weber Basin has the ability to approve or reject selling these shares, which puts us at risk if in the future we have to buy shares to fulfill the water contract and they were to say no. So I think that we need to reconsider our stance on this, and I've asked for some legal review, because if we can't get the water, we can't service the development. So I think we need to revisit this because we were told previous years that this wouldn't be an issue, that we would always be able to buy it. But apparently that's no longer the case, or maybe it never was, but with the option to deny, we're no longer, we're at risk as a city.
That's actually a good point. I think we should look at that and see if that's a viable option, because if we can't support it, then we need to do something. And just as a point of clarification, this is not to purchase shares. This is to purchase water for 1 year.
Wholesale water.
Wholesale.
That's true.
These are not shares.
It's acre feet of water.
Acre feet.
It's a volume of
You're not
water
buying it.
under contract. That's
For the lack of shares that they're bringing.
Correct.
So it's one replacing a
We're just buying a.
it's a little semantics, but their mayor.
potato, tomato.
We-
You don't get to keep them.
I do have an item on the work session to talk about this very issue,
Okay.
so we can get into it.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I'll take a motion.
So moved.
I move that let me find where our action was,
12.
that we approve the execution of the franchise agreement with Rocky Mountain Power. Is that what-
Nope.
oh, right.
Nope.
Sorry, I jumped
One
ahead.
up.
Sorry, you guys, I jumped ahead. Where's my action on this?
This is the
12,
executed
ma'am.
agreement with
Number
Weber
12.
Basin.
Now it's moving all over. Here,
I got it.
I move that we approve allowing the mayor to execute an agreement with Weber Basin Water Conservancy District for the purchase and use of untreated water.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 13 would be proposed ordinance 2022-33 granting an electric utility franchise and general utility easement with Rocky Mountain Power. And we have talked about this one quite extensively, and they did come and present. So I don't want to, is there anything new on this?
No, what's in the packet is the proposal.
Just changing from 10 to 20 years though, right?
Yes, that was their request to do so.
Is there anything detrimental about that?
I think I wouldn't say detrimental. It's a power company that, we'll be dealing with for the next 20 years,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
But,
Means we can hold them accountable if something goes wrong.
but it is up to the council to decide if you want to do 20, 15, 10.
So I did have a question. I noticed one of the items that was removed was our ability to attach lights to poles. Are we okay with that?
We can't attach those lights anyway.
We're-
There's like,
Yeah,
Used to could. It was.
We're kind of,
Uh,
I would say, I would characterize it as we're kind of lukewarm with that. They do have a policy that they will allow that, so it's not like an issue right now, but they wanted to maintain control of that.
Okay.
They have very
There's-
precise
so-
lights, I learned.
Part of the tariff they have is allows for it, but they didn't want to rewrite it into the contract to duplicate what they already had in place in a tariff. So that's where I'm kind of lukewarm. I like it in black and white and make it very clear. It's simple to do, but they just resisted doing that.
So by removing it from the contract, we still believe we have the ability to do this if needed.
We do. They said they would have no problem if there's a need for us. In fact, they don't want to have to maintain the street lights, so they had no problem with us doing that.
Well, they do have a problem with it. And when we tried to get streetlights fixed, it took them forever. And then asking them to put up our own light on it, they said no.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what this says and what everybody thinks is going to happen already showed that it's not gonna.
Yeah.
That's why I was a little uncomfortable removing it from the contract because.
Yeah. Well, we already
Great.
can't put them up. Whenever I asked about a solar panel, street light, they said they have very specific ones that they allow on their poles and they have to meet that criteria. And it's not just their regulation, it's a state and federal regulations that they have to meet. So I understand why they took this out because it keeps them from getting in any higher issues. So I learned about this with that crosswalk over there on 3000. And they were very specific about what lights that they can and cannot have up there. And they're very expensive lights.
Mhm. As long as you're good with that removal and we still have that option if needed, then.
I think if it becomes a problem, I'll definitely be hounding them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I'll take a motion.
Now I'm
Motion-
ready for that
Oh,
one.
go for
Sorry,
it.
I've got that one. Now I'm there.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve proposed ordinance 2022-33, granting an electric utility franchise and general utility easement to Rocky Mountain Power.
Second.
Motion moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay, at this time, we do have online our audit group. So I'm going to recall item number 4, which is presentation of the annual audit report by Gilbert and Stewart.
All right, I'll just quickly introduce Ron Stewart. He is the partner at Gilbert and Stewart. This is, I believe, our 3rd year we've had with them doing our audit. And I'm just going to turn the time over to him. Can you hear us, Ron?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much for letting me be here tonight. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Appreciate you letting me be here electronically as well. Like they said, my name is Ron Stewart. I'm partner with Gilbert and Stewart's. We are contracted to do the audit for 2022. What I'd like to do is just take a couple minutes and quickly go through what we do as auditors, how we come to the conclusions and those conclusions. So with a city, there's really 3 things that we as auditors looking at. One is to determine if the financial statements that you have are materially correct and that you can rely on those numbers. The second thing is to ensure that your internal controls are working and that they're designed and they're functioning. And the third is to make sure that we're in compliance with state law per the state auditor's office. So how we come to those conclusions, for the first one, as far as the financial statements, we take a look at the trial balance or the records of the city, and then we perform a number of tests on those balances to ensure that they're materially correct. We send out confirmations. That's a great way to understand if what we show on the books is the same thing that third parties are showing. So we send out confirmations for cash, debt, and the major governmental revenues within the city. Through the course of the audit, we pull a significant number of invoices. We look at those at the beginning of the audit to randomly sample some just to see what the controls are like, make sure that things are, that we get a good feel of what is happening within the city. We also do invoices for accounts payable, fixed assets, credit cards. So we look at a significant number of invoices as we go through the audit process. We also look at, there's balances and calculations on the financial statements. We look at those and recalculate those balances to make sure that those are materially correct and they make sense. We do those for depreciation, payroll accruals, compensated absences. We do a lot of analytical reviews. We'll look at the beginning of the audit, we pull a sample and look at this year compared to last year, look for trends, look for differences. That kind of helps us design our procedures and processes. As we're testing balances throughout the year, we'll also review those again as we're testing those balances to make sure, did something change? Does it look different? And then we start asking questions and performing more procedures. And then at the end of the audit, as we're writing the financial statements or reviewing those statements, we'll look at it a third time to make sure that we didn't miss anything in those areas that we see have been addressed. And then there's a significant other number of procedures that we perform. We do that so that we can come to a conclusion that the financial statements that you have in front of you are materially correct and that you can rely on those numbers. If you have the financial statements in front of you, if you look at the audit report, let's see if I can pull that up. It is on page, it's on page 13 of your document. The first paragraph is our opinion paragraph. It says, the second paragraph down says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, each major fund and the aggregate remaining fund information of the city as of June 30th, 2022, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable cash flows thereof for the year ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That is the opinion paragraph. That's a clean or unmodified opinion or the best opinion that you can receive. So what that means is through our testing, through our reviews, we feel like the financial statements that you have are materially correct and you can rely on those numbers. Second thing we do as auditors is look at internal controls. We don't necessarily give an opinion on controls, but we do evaluate those controls to make sure that they are, they've been designed, that they're implemented and they're working effectively. We do that through interviews, through walkthroughs, through questionnaires to make sure that the controls within the city are protecting the assets of the citizens. If there was a portion of the city that just didn't have a control or things were just not working to that level, that would be considered a material weakness. And we would bring that to your attention. If there were a small number of instances that were enough of those, that would be considered a significant deficiency. And we would also bring that to your attention. Through our testing, through the walkthroughs, the interviews, and through our other procedures throughout our audit, we didn't feel that there was anything that came to the level of a significant deficiency or a material weakness. So we feel that your controls are working, that they've been designed properly, and that they're being watched and reviewed. The third thing we do as auditors is look at the state compliance. So the state auditor gives certain procedures to be performed on a yearly basis, every 3 years and every 5 years. And so we review those, select a number of procedures to perform, and then perform those procedures based on the guidance from the state auditor. We looked this year at budgetary compliance, fund balance, justice court, restricted taxes, government fees, fraud risk assessment, cash management, and retirement system. So we took the prescribed forms and procedures from the state and performed those. And in our opinion, says in our opinion, Syracuse City's complied in all material respects with the state compliance requirements referred to above for the year ended June 30th, 2022. So through our procedures, we felt like you were in compliance with state law in those areas that we reviewed and looked at. So that's really a quick review of what we do as auditors, the conclusions that we came to, and what that means for you as a city. I'd be happy to answer any questions or discuss anything else that anybody else has.
Council, do you have any particular questions for the auditor?
Good report. A lot of information and I appreciate it. I don't have any questions. I'm not a keen auditor, so I trust you.
I would just reiterate that a clean report with no deficiencies, no problems is wonderful. And thank you again, Steve, for another wonderful year of a strong statement. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. And a shout out to Steve and his staff. They do a great job. We throw a lot out of them, at them, and they respond very quickly and efficiently. So I agree. Your city's in good hands. Thank you for your time.
I just want to say, I'm not sure who printed this out, but the next time I get yelled at by citizens about the report, I can now physically take it with me when I go talk to them and be like, here, please take a look.
What would you like to?
Thank you for that.
They can have a free copy too. We'll make one for them.
I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Moving back to our agenda item next would be 14, which is public comment. I don't see anyone in the audience here today. Online, it appears to be mostly staff. So I will open it really briefly, but is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment and confirm that I did check. The doors are open. We are open tonight. So it is an open meeting. All right. Next will be mayor and council announcements. If there are any upcoming events that you need to draw attention to, we'll start with you, Ms. Carver.
Okay, first, we currently don't have anything to put out electric car fires, folks. The chief is working on it. So Miss Lisa, if your car goes kaput, we got to pull it away and let it, and Seth. So the fire chief is working on it. But if you guys have any questions about that, talk to him. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that in case anything comes up in the future.
I will not sleep or rest until
This was not in sight.
What happens? I'm going to add something else to this. It's going to make you not sleep. I'd like to add a discussion in January to adding public works to the public safety open house. So we can discuss that and see if that's something that we're going to do so they can figure that out budgetary wise before that comes up.
Yeah, I thought we already decided to do that. Is that?
We didn't vote on it though. Like we didn't discuss it formally and we probably should.
Okay.
So Mr. Mayor, the Emergency Preparedness Committee would like you to add a little blurb in your monthly thing about your monthly report in the Syracuse Connection about the mock emergency that they're going to have in the spring. So maybe people can be a little more aware of it. The museum, big shout out to them. They delivered 30 blankets to the women's shelter and the Lady Lions. Those women just keep it handled. They did so much work. The museum's going to be closed the 24th through Sunday, January 8th. They have winter break also. And the mural is bringing people in to see the museum quite a bit, actually, lots and lots. And one last thing I want to mention that it is the holiday season and I contacted the PD and found out this year we've had 3 suicides in our city. So please be kind to each other. Oh, there you go.
All right. I'm guessing I'm next.
Yeah, you're next.
Okay. I wanted to also add, if you didn't see the awesome fire truck outside, it is very beautiful. And if you didn't get a chance to see it.
Santa ride.
What's that?
Santa runs on Saturday.
I've got it.
Got it.
That's where I'm going next. If you didn't see it outside today, it will be taking Santa on a tour of the entire community on Saturday at 9 a.m. So not only do you get to see Santa and I believe Mrs. Claus will be there, as well as possibly an elf I've heard that he's bringing down. And you get to see our awesome new truck. It is beautiful. They let me push all the buttons, so I'm good. And this was an interesting one. I actually had a citizen reach out to me And for the first time in a long time, I had citizens asking for a new fee, a new penalty, in fact. As I looked through our fee structure, I could not find a penalty, and there might be something in there, but if not, we need to discuss it. There is no penalty for not removing snow at the moment from your sidewalk. It might be covered in general. I need to talk to Noah, but just wanted to know that if we don't have a clear path on that, we probably need to put something in because we've been receiving multiple complaints.
Noted for future discussion. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And I believe that is everything I had for now.
Okay. Let's begin.
Okay, we have a ribbon cutting with the West Davis Chamber of Commerce, which council is also invited to. You probably saw that this Saturday at 9:30 at Quench. And then also on the 22nd, which is next Thursday at 10 o'clock, Maverick. Is that right? Everybody already saw that.
Got them on my calendar.
Yep, that one's on there. Let me see. Oh, the museum ribbon cutting was wonderful. You're right. That mural is amazing. So glad that we have that and it catches your eye. So that was great to be to, and went on a little tour once we were done and just saw some really great things. I usually haven't gone into that secondary outbuilding. So that was great to go to. I apologize to anybody in charge of the Christmas party. I had marked it on Friday. It was on Thursday. I got a text saying we missed you, and I was literally doing nothing. So I'm so sorry not to have been there and not to be able to shake hands and appreciate all the people and the staff that have worked so hard and received awards. And so I apologize for that. That was purely my poor organizational skills. So Merry Christmas, everyone.
Seth.
Yeah, just one quick announcement. Tomorrow, I'll have more information after this next meeting, but tomorrow is our final CTC meeting of the year, and it's going to be held at Clearfield City Hall at 12. There is a luncheon served, and they'll be following up on priorities of last year, and then discussing additional assignments and reassignments for committee members, and then talking about future priorities. So told you guys in the past, if you have any feelings or thoughts on priorities that they should be focused on, it'd be great to get feedback, but no obligation there. But it's a great committee and I'm happy to be part of it.
Great. Paul.
Okay, no updates for me.
Okay.
Mayor, I've got one.
Okay, Brody.
Councilmember Savage also was not able to, he was out of town, not able to make the holiday party. But he is now in the elite class of 5 years of service with the city. And as a council member, that's something to say. And we've got a pin here for him. It has the city logo with 5 years, and it's got 2 sapphires on it, which may or may not be real. But we'd like to recognize him for those years of service. Thank you.
Thank you. Please know I was very sad to have missed that meeting. I was on a plane and I was hoping I'd get home in time, but I had told them in advance I would be unable to make it. But thank you very much. This is awesome.
Okay. At this time, we have a very big agenda for work session. So I'm going to declare us in recess and we will reconvene in the conference room.
Interrupt you, you just thought I was gonna, I forgot. I see, it was like someone's gonna remember.
I was on
Good. Shit, what am
I was waiting to see if you were going to announce it.
Yeah.
I had, if she doesn't say anything, I will.
Had my list and I didn't put that on it.
That's really
I'm waiting. I had to wait. I know, but when I remember to say, please don't forget.
I happen to know that you know Mrs. Fox.
You know, she's friends. So is that nobody will out? Talking about the. What they're.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I see thumbs up. I'm so sorry. Okay, I cannot hear you. Is that normal? No, this is a fun game. Do you want me to go ahead and get started? Yes. All right, let's get you guys home before midnight, huh? So my name is Ashley Young. I'm the Director of Animal Care of Davis County, and we are doing some updates to our ordinances, our county ordinances that we just wanted to loop in our cities about. Syracuse City has adopted Davis County's ordinances in most cases, so that does apply to the sale of animals, rabies control, and the licensing and permit sections of the ordinances that we're going to be discussing tonight. The main exception there is the pet limit, which is what I really want to dive in and talk with you about tonight. But just so you are aware, we are looking at putting in a new ordinance on sales of animals in pet stores. So this primarily pertains to like puppy mills, breeders, things along those lines that would be selling in pet stores. It does not restrict the sales of like reptiles, birds, anything that you're really going to find at Petco. And it encourages all pet stores to have adopted pets in their stores if it's a dog or a cat. Syracuse City does not have any stores selling puppy mill dogs that we are aware of, or cats. But that is something we will be putting into our ordinance for Davis County, just so you're aware. If anyone comes and asks you about that, we do have it, or we will have it soon. We've also are just doing some typical updating to our rabies procedures and protocols to match the rabies compendium. Nothing new or crazy. We're just updating from the 90s on that. So pretty good change for us. But then we do want to talk about pet limit. I'll tell you about the options, and then maybe we'll have some sound at that point. So we have two options that we're presenting to the cities. Option A allows for a total of 3 dogs and or a cat with the option of an additional pet permit, which we're really encouraging the cities to adopt. That is Davis County's recommendation, is option A. As a reminder, Syracuse City currently allows residents to have 2 dogs. That's how the code reads. Option B, oh, I can hear you.
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you.
Our current ordinance allows 3 dogs.
Yeah, we allow 3.
Do you?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
No, I was here when we changed it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we allow a combination of up to 3. This is a combination of up to 4.
Yes.
So
Yep.
we only allow 2
We
dogs
allow
and a cat,
3
or
no, we allow 3 dogs.
what does it
3
say?
dogs.
We can have a combination of 3 household pets, any
Okay.
combination of cats and dogs.
So this
Yeah, combination.
specifies up to 3 dogs and a cat specified on it. So this is different.
So this would allow us more.
Okay,
Yeah.
we allow
So
Yes,
we
the
doesn't
schedule-
change our number of dogs.
it changes our number of pets to 4 with
we're
up to a
talking
max of
nuance.
3 dogs.
Yeah.
Let's get through
Yes.
this.
So it can change it to 4 with the additional pet permit. And that permit is a permit that would be issued by Davis County. And it's for individuals that have not had any instances of our officers being called out. The animals have to be spayed and neutered, microchipped, all those responsible pet owner type items to allow that 4th dog. So there is some criteria that they have to meet and pass to be permitted that extra dog. And since it is 3 currently, I would recommend option A, because option B is 2 dogs or cats of any combination. And the whole point that we're looking at this pet limit is trying not to get pets surrendered to our shelter because of the pet limit. This year at Animal Care, we have been literally overrun with animals, primarily dogs, owner surrenders, more than we have seen in the last 5 years. It's very different and very hard this year for our organization. And so this pet limit, we're hoping, can help relieve some of that, allowing, Layton City, their pet limit is 2 dogs. So allowing up to 2 more animals is really going to help us out, because what we're finding is a lot of our adopters are maxed out, and we will not adopt out to someone if it's going to put them over the limit.
Question. Ashley, if
Yeah.
if the city does Schedule A and allows 3 3 cats and dogs in any combination.
Mhm.
And then there's the additional 4th animal that can be done with that county permit, which
Yeah.
you mentioned. How would it work administratively? Because right now, for the 4th animal in Syracuse, you have to get the residential kennel license as a land use permit, a conditional use
Mhm.
permit. I'm a little concerned that there might be a lot of confusion with the residents, because they'll go apply for that 4th animal with the county. Will the county even know that they need a conditional use permit or not?
Yeah, so some of the cities are running into this, and what we're encouraging is looking at that kennel permit. That is something that we are changing for animal care in our county code, that a kennel permit is only issued if it is an actual physical kennel. We will no longer be issuing or wanting to issue permits for someone's home. When we are issuing that kennel permit, we have to call out the health department. At times we have to call out the USDA, and we're having all these bigger organizations come out to someone's home that doesn't have any sort of kennel facility. So we're hoping that this update, like our animal pet limit for Davis County hasn't been updated since the 90s. And we're hoping that this update will actually serve the residents better and have its purpose met, because a kennel should be a kennel. And if we're okay with residents who are good pet owners having that 4th dog, then our animal limit should allow that, in our opinion, Davis County.
So in our ordinance, you can go beyond 4 animals if you meet the criteria.
Kennel license.
But
Right.
with kennel license, yeah.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is the county would rather the limit is at 4 period.
Well, no, they said they want the kennel permit that only have kennel permits for actual kennels. That way the other dogs are for like adopteds that are licensed through the county as the 4th dog.
So we have 2 kinds of kennels in Syracuse. We have a residential kennel. Maximum is 4 dogs. Max.
Mhm.
A commercial kennel, yeah, you could have more. I think
That would jive with.
So that would,
That's different
that,
anyway.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
residential kennel is what we're.
What you're probably thinking of when you say kennel.
So let me just bring a concern that I have forward, and that is if we have the option to have a 4th dog, which currently we don't except for under the kennel license, how does anybody know when they try to report a code violation for someone who has over the limit dogs if they have a permit or not for a 4th dog?
Yeah,
Because
so
that's a common thing is people call in and
Because they
say,
would call the county to complain to the county and the county would know if they had a permit or not.
yes. So we're hoping that
Over animal
Centerville,
services.
Centerville City does a
Right,
great
we
job
still
of
have
this.
to enforce-
They'll send it over to us for our officers to go out and chat with the dog owner, because we have to figure out what to do with those extra dogs and what's the resolution and why is this happening. And so we work hand in hand with them, and it's been a really great partnership and working really well for us. But that is the issue we've been running into with commercial kennels also, because the city will issue the conditional use permit, but then there's no communication back to animal care. And so this is something that we've been troubleshooting a little bit and trying to work through. And I feel like the relationship that animal care has with the city managers is maybe better than it has been in a long time or ever, especially when it comes to communication, something that we're going to constantly have to continue to work through there, because it does take communication on both ends for the zoning department and our department to make sure that there aren't violations, that we're doing kennel inspections, and that the conditions are humane for the pets and all these
So I
different
have a
things.
question. Does this now alleviate off of our code enforcement and become an animal control issue? Or is it still, if that 4th dog is registered through the county, we don't have record of it, does that become your code enforcement issue, or do we still need to send our code enforcement?
Nope, we'll handle it. We would love to handle it.
Okay, so they'll handle it, but what are we gonna do? Because people will still call us.
Yeah, we'll get the calls
So
and
we're
they
gonna
just
start saying,
forward it over to animal.
That becomes a them problem.
So our ordinance is a little bit more nuanced. They're just saying 4 dogs anywhere. Our
Right.
ordinance says 4 dogs if you have a big enough yard. There's some areas in our city where we don't think that there should be allowed to have 4 dogs, like in the apartments or in a
Right.
tiny yard, that 4 dogs would be too many. So that's
We have
where
the 100.
our ordinance would need to be able to trump what their ordinance says.
Yeah.
We have more control.
Yeah, that's current. Yeah, what she's talking about is if we were to adopt this ordinance this way,
Supersede or
we would
rewrite
just,
this with
yeah,
their.
we have, and Noah's right, though, we need to address the land use regulation that we have on a
Is there
residential
conflict?
kennel license. Is
What-
that something we want?
Are we still gonna?
What is the
have to-
criteria for the 4th animal?
There's currently nothing written in there regarding space or land use. It's a pretty slippery
Nothing.
slide because in some, like if you have 4 Chihuahuas, that's probably fine. If we're talking 4 Great Danes, it's a different conversation. But we also don't want to put in like breed type legislature. And so it's really on a case by case of, what's going on in that home.
So basically you have no criteria for rejecting someone that applies.
Not for land use.
Well, in general, like
No,
why would you
Well,
deny?
should they have the criteria of
neuter.
complaints or animal problems?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would be it.
Spayed, neutered, no complaints.
So as long as they say they haven't had any complaints, they could have 4 Great Danes in an apartment and you would authorize that.
I think so.
No, no. So what I mean by that is it's on a case by case. We don't want to say if you live in an apartment, you can't have 4 dogs. Because in some cases, if their landlord is okay with that, which would be crazy, a whole nother conversation. But in some cases, that would be maybe okay, right? If it's 4 5-pound Chihuahuas or 4 cats, then maybe that's fine. But if we're talking big 200-pound dogs, then obviously that's not going to be a good fit.
So if they asked for a 4th 200-pound dog, would you check the residence or see what their square footage is?
Yeah, and then we would come back to you guys and say, we think this is crazy. What do you think? But we could put in, if there's specific things that you want in there for space wise, we can do that. We're not experts in coding and zoning though, so we'll need support in that.
So this is like, it still relies on a landlord thing. That's up to, if you own your own property, it's up to, but a landlord can still say, you can only have 2 pets.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
so the
absolutely.
apartment's an extreme example, but you
It
could
is,
still
yeah,
have.
but no, I don't know an apartment owner that's gonna be like, yeah, we'll let you have 4 Great Danes
But
in
you could
here.
have a
Sounds great.
condo, you could have a condo.
And
you own.
then you, yeah, that you
Or a
own,
townhome
yeah,
corner.
and it's,
There's no yard.
but in that case, don't you think the neighbors would complain?
But I think one of the things that's being raised here is that as a city, we try to keep with things that are universal so that we're not giving people different stories because of this and for, somebody can have different rules. So we've tried to keep things to universally enforceable rules. And now we're hearing the suggestion that we would have variances in pet ownership.
So I have a question. If we were to adopt it's more of like a statement. If we were to adopt that would basically make our residence kennel licensing pretty much void, and all of the dog calls would now become a you problem, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Are we still maintaining our 100-foot requirement?
Yeah, it would depend. She was asking for zoning guidance on that, if that was something additionally we would want to add, but
We have
as of right now,
decided,
they're very
yeah.
vague and keep it without that.
There's a lot of families that have kids and more than one family living in households together, and people have dogs and cats as their own personal pets. So like I have 2 roommates and a kid, and we have 3 dogs, and it's just, it makes sense to support people and with it. And if it becomes a nuisance, they come deal with it. And if you have a complaint, that's where that rule comes in, that you can only have that 4th dog if there's like no complaining on you, or you're keeping them under control, or they're not making a mess and your neighbors aren't angry about it. If you have a quiet 4th dog and it's in the house or whatever, how are you, you see what I'm saying? Like they have stuff in here for that. And it makes sense, and it makes it a whole countywide. And
my
I like the
concern-
idea of not having to have our cops go talk to people about their dogs.
I agree. My concern is it doesn't sound like there's much written down yet for criteria of when you can authorize that. I mean, yes, So let's say they get a complaint and they have a fourth dog. They need to get rid of it now?
That's up to animal control. It's no longer an us thing.
Well, I just don't want a whole bunch of dogs ending up in shelters because people went and got them.
Well, right now, if they call, they probably already have one or two too many dogs anyway, would have to send them to a shelter. So this alleviates that problem. That was the whole thing she said in the beginning.
I think realistically, we have to understand that you don't go from managing the pet problem for 50 years and then suddenly say, you know, it's out of our hands, not our issue anymore. We're going to have some kind of transformation from people expecting to call the city to the new set, the way that we go about things. So
that on everything.
What I'm suggesting is we're going to have some kind of transition plan. Otherwise, we're going to be still bogged down with calls to our code enforcement and our police, who will just tell people to go call somebody else. But we're going to have to, work on getting the word out. It's a different situation.
Or you initially go with Schedule B, do two, they would have to check with the third, and then the fourth requires a kennel.
I think A alleviates a lot of problems for all of us.
Yeah, I think with B though, you already allow 3 dogs, and so that limits it down to 2 with the additional dog. So now you're taking away animals, right? And so that's really hard. That's going to be hard on the citizens and enforcement. That's tricky. You can do the 3 without the additional animal permit. Stay where you're at if that's what is most comfortable. But really, our goal through this transition into the county taking over the funding of animal care is to have some more uniformed ordinances. Currently, there's 9 different pet limits in our cities, and it's very challenging for not only the residents if they move from city to city, but for my animal control officers and enforcement of those ordinances. So we're really looking for some sort of unified decision here through option A or B.
So one of the ways to look at it is animal care will regulate essentially animal behavior, right? We won't have, other than barking at night after hours where our police will respond because it's disturbing the peace. Animal care services will handle anything related to animal behavior. The city has a way of regulating animals through their land use authority. And so the question is, do you want to use that authority to sort of preempt problems from happening by having the 100-foot distance requirement on a residential kennel, quote unquote kennel license? That's kind of the regulatory question.
Well, and it would seem to me that it would be obviously pretty redundant to have us use conditional use process to get to that 4th dog, plus have them go through their process. Those can't really coexist in my mind.
I'm okay going forward with A, but I would like the county to look at some of our restrictions and see if those can be applied in your scenario. If those make sense, if you'd be willing to consider those as part of your permitting process.
Yeah, absolutely. We can look at that. I did pull up the drafted ordinance that we have, and it does ask for a depiction of the outside area showing all fencing, kennels, and dog runs, which are capable of confining up to X, however many we decide, total dogs. And we can add something in there about 100 feet away from other residents or what that looks like, if that would make it Syracuse more comfortable.
Some backyards aren't even 100 feet.
Well, what would it look like if there is literally no backyard?
Then they would probably get denied.
They would just have, so there's no chihuahuas in
you couldn't have that
no chihuahuas. No, number 4, you can have 3.
And no 2 chihuahuas and 2 cats.
No.
Be able to have that 4th animal in that case.
I've always been very open about the fact that I don't agree with animal control on much, but I definitely agree with them on this. On A, I think it'd be very beneficial for the city and the county in a whole.
And Councilwoman Carter, we allow, we just don't allow 4 dogs. So we would be able to allow a combination of 4 without having the kennel license. It's just if you get a 4th dog.
Is the kennel license. So this would basically mean that we would have to change that.
So if the council was okay with 3 dogs and a cat, that wouldn't trigger our kennel license requirement. If we want to just stick with 3 dogs. that's okay too.
I think Brody brought up an interesting point though, and that is that how do we separate the other issues that law enforcement would go out for, which would be disturbing the peace or some other kind of violation that is clearly their department. And I mean, they're going to have to work in conjunction with animal control, but it doesn't take away, or our code enforcement, it doesn't take away noise ordinance violation.
They do a bark log. Our cops go out one time and then they're issued a bark log from animal control. And they have to fill it out for 14 days straight. At times the dog is barking, and then they submit that bark log to animal control. So that's only a one-time call normally.
So that was our old process. We now do a little bit more to handle that differently. As soon as we get the bark complaint, we send out a letter saying to the dog owner saying that there has been a complaint or a concern about barking in the area with times that the barking was happening. And then we do still send out the bark logs, but our officers also go out and interview neighbors as well to see if they're having that issue as well. And if we have other neighbors complaining, we will go to a notice of violation pretty quickly. Just because the bark log process, it was so long, it wasn't quick to get on the concern and resolve the problem for the citizen. And it didn't work, if I'm completely honest. So we've really revamped that process and we've seen quite a bit of success. We've been doing it for about 3 months.
Great.
Next.
Chief Atkin is online. Can I ask that he chime in and just share with us how he feels like this would affect his calls, if at all?
See if he's paying attention.
Pew pew boss.
Ashley, the other question I have while we're waiting on that is just on the so the fourth dog being spayed, neutered, chipped, is that only applying to the fourth extra dog added, or do you guys like verify that the other dogs are?
Yeah, it has to be all pets in the home need to be altered. When we get that many pets under one roof, there is a lot more likelihood and chance of accidental breeding and litters. And so we really want to make sure that all the this pet owner has to be responsible, like doing all the right things to get that permit and not having instances of concern with us to get that fourth dog. Because I personally, director of animal care, I would not own 4 dogs. I think that's a lot, but I'm not, our citizen. And I understand that every household's different.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Someone text him.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I'm good. Thanks.
It's okay.
I'm good with A if we can craft some of the comments to provide to them on the zoning side of things and see how they could incorporate that into the policy. It seems like it would
Agreed.
work.
Yeah.
You guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm good with that as well.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions for me?
I don't think so. Thank you, Ashley.
No,
So
thank you.
actually, I'll be in contact with you and kind of work through that.
Yeah, that would be great. And then Brody does have the draft ordinance. I believe it was in the report as well for you guys. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, moving on. We have some planning items, consideration of city-initiated zone change for property along Antelope Drive near the West Davis corridor. You'll have to stand.
I kind of like bought that for a second.
That was a joke.
Take your chair.
That's okay. All right. Well, this next item is not exactly as exciting as dogs, but it is an interesting conversation that I think needs your attention. As you know, they've expanded Antelope Drive and demolished a bunch of homes. Hopefully you guys had a chance to read through the packet and look at the maps and stuff. All of that property. Let's see if I've got a zoning map in here.
So while he's pulling that up, let me just say that where this began was when we informed everybody that we were going to meet with UDOT about possible available properties and how they would dispose of them. When we met with them, we realized that there would be some commercially viable properties that they would be letting go. And they mentioned to us that their preference would be to sell them off as combined lots, not as individual lots. So, and we've asked for that as well, that we thought that was best. So in doing that, the question is, because they will be new combined lots, should we change the map to let people know that we think these are commercially viable properties?
So you have the option of changing them. The only thing I would just bring to your attention, usually we don't rezone until we have an applicant. So this is a little bit different. You would, because there's commercial viability, if you change it, it cuts out a step. So if somebody's going to come and develop it, they don't have to come to us.
But I mean, what you're suggesting is they could come and do anything commercial that's in the commercial zone.
Once it's rezoned, we're opening up the door to.
But without that, we're leaving the door open that they could just come in and do anything that's viable in the residential zone. And if we do believe these are commercially viable properties that we think are key to the city, my thought is that we need to consider zoning them appropriately so that we're letting people know that that's, you know, how we see the future of the city.
Yeah, if we don't zone it, if we don't change the zoning, yeah, they would put a R1 subdivision. You'd be looking at single family lots. I don't know.
Well, the way we have it zoned, they could do as much as, you know, higher density as well.
Could we do the general plan and not the actual zoning map?
It's already there.
So we're basically
Already done.
forcing this into what we want to see.
Yeah,
Does
so
this,
if you look at
That's what we do.
Yeah.
look at the
right.
ordinance.
does this
yeah.
give them a higher sell value to UDOT?
No,
No.
Okay.
Does
But
it give
here's
them a
the
lower-
general plan.
no.
The red
Doesn't
is
change it.
commercial. It pretty well, it encompasses all of the, so we're already anticipating. So if you remember, the commercial designation would allow the general commercial zone, the professional office zone, or the MXD zone. So somebody could do any of those things now and still be consistent with the general plan. But the current zoning, if we were to rezone it, they could do, so I included that in the ordinance as well. So here's the list of permitted uses in the general commercial zone. So you would, you know, any of these, they pull up and say, I want to do that, and we would just move directly to site plan.
So should we just rezone it A1? And then we reserve all options?
Well, some of them are already zoned A1.
So yeah, some of them
idea
are.
was this? Whose thought process was this?
This is mine.
But yeah, there's no applicant here. This would be
No.
a self-initiated.
When
You
we
sure
were-
want to push that city center to go right there during that off ramp, don't you? That's what you've been going for. That's what this looks like. You want the city center moving that direction, right down.
no, I want city center to still be viable.
I know, I'm just recognizing this was your idea.
Well, our general plan does say
Okay.
that, you know, that's what we've all signed up
It says
for
it's
on our
anticipated.
plan.
Yeah, we all have
It's not like it's out of the blue. But, you know, what this would do,
We're just getting jump on it.
well, this would lose a little bit of, we're not, that's what
There's
we're
pros
talking
and cons
about.
of
it.
this. I
So
think that's. I
sounds
think
like we have
both-
no-
yeah.
There are.
Absolutely.
I think, so for me, I like reserving the ability, I see the risk of leaving it residential zoned, and then you have anything that can come in that permitted use. I love reserving the flexibility to have somebody come in with a plan and say, are you willing to rezone this and get us to, you know, that point?
There's some leverage.
And I
that
just don't know what outweighs what, right? The
Yeah.
risk of residential on Antelope, we've had a hard time with that in some other areas
Yes.
where it's just not been viable or not been appetizing, you know, for so many folks.
The
So, I
reason-
don't
We could
know.
say no.
So if we
Yeah.
Like we
did
zone now
recently.
for that, that makes it so these are the only things they can do. Which they haven't necessarily had an appetite for that, but if we don't rezone it, it impedes somebody who's ready to hit the ground running. And if they know they have to go through a whole process of
Yes,
rezoning, and it could take months,
But they have to go through that process normally anyway.
Well,
Mm.
not if it's,
Not
if it's
if it's
already
zoned.
zoned. So like, if, you know, so like if we wanted to build a shop and we knew that Clearfield
I-
had this
I
whole
understand
area
that.
that's commercial. Then I'm just saying it may be, and that's why this is what's, again,
me,
a
it's hard.
discussion. You can see how a few months' time saved in not having to go through the process of rezoning would be appealing to somebody
Oh, yeah.
who every day counts, you know? But I can also see that it limits us and puts us into a place where we have to say, these are the only things that we're considering at this point, and nobody seems to be interested in that anyway.
Do we know how they're going to subdivide the lots? Do we know what groupings are going to do?
We know kind of, and we'll talk about that later
Combining them.
tonight. That's in another part of the packet, so I don't want to get into that if we can help it.
But we know that when UDOT surpluses properties, sometimes they're individual parcels and sometimes they group them. It's a little bit out of our control exactly how.
Exactly.
If you look at how it was done on, down Antelope in front of our little apartments, they ended up with a few fractured things and they worked through it and they ended up buying them.
Yeah, they have agreed to work with us as far as suggested groupings. And I think that that's in the city's best interest to suggest that
Bigger
parcels, right? So let me just say the logic. So as we were talking about what would happen here is they auction off properties. The reason this came forward in my thinking on this for bringing it forward was as you get off exits and you see commercial to one direction and you're looking for something, whether it be gas station, restaurant, whatever, if you see commercial, you tend to go that direction. I'm hoping to draw people to our existing city center. What I tend to do, at least when I'm driving in places and I see nothing, I don't know which, where to head in. Maybe I just go on to the next exit, who knows? But the point is that if we start to build up what's already here, because we do have a city center at the crossroads of 2000 and Antelope. We have the movie theaters, which are at 2,500. And this is basically between 2,500 and 3,000. I'm hoping to just, cue some interest. I think that the lots are where the lots are viable, I would, like to promote business development in those locations.
And keep in mind, the question tonight is whether to send this to the planning commission to evaluate.
And they will have their own recommendation.
Or not.
Do you have concerns,
Yeah.
Jen, specific concerns?
Let the planning commission talk about it. I'd like to hear what they got to say.
So if you send it to the planning commission, we will have to send out public noticing to all of the parcels. So we'll be able to hear what the neighbors think. And
I would like to hear what they want to hear,
Yeah.
what they got to say.
I think commercial along this corridor would actually be a really good thing. I think it would help. Especially where you're gonna have a major thoroughfare between 2000 and the freeway on-ramp.
Yeah.
If you can get commercial right in that strip, I think that makes a ton of sense.
What would the notice be to the plan, or what would the question be to the planning commission? Would it be,
Should
we
we
rezone
Rezone it now.
Should we rezone it?
so the notice to residents would be this is being considered for rezone, or would it
it'd
be?
be basically this map right here that's
To
you see on the
match the map
screen.
that we already have.
So this is already UDOT owned property, all in the road.
Yes.
That's it. No other residents own it. No citizens own it.
I think one that's still residential is the one that's not being rezoned.
Right.
So I took that one out because that's not currently. owned by
Because,
UDOT.
so
Okay.
here's the process that UDOT's identified to us. When they are done with the properties they acquired, they have, the first step is they have to offer it back to whoever they bought it from. And in this case, what the one that was taken out, UDOT has expressed us that that person has expressed interest to buy it back, whatever remains. So we're not counting that one right now because that would be bought back. The second option is for the city. The city can come in and say, we need this as a part of our city, and we could buy it without it going to auction. Then the third step is public auction. So those are the options that happen in that order. And
Now, what step do they offer it to, or as an adjacent property owner, do they approach them?
That would be just public auction from what
Probably.
what
Yeah.
Randy said to us is.
See, that's not what they've done in the past.
It's
Like
what-
on 2000, they first
Like
approached
say
like
the guy
adjacent
next
property
door wants
owners.
to buy it.
Yeah.
I think
And what's
that's a
called a
small
first right of
properties.
refusal. So if they
Yeah.
like tore down your house, like they'll give you a chance to buy
But
back.
he suggested
No, but I'm
like
saying
the
like
guy
actually
next to it.
next to it.
So he actually had no ownership.
But that's what occurred with.
Right.
But that was just a small parcel, wasn't it?
I do know that where that little square cuts in,
That's that barn, isn't it?
no.
The reason that was a possibility,
want
I think,
that.
is
You talking
because
about that?
they were gonna give it
wants
to the
that?
city
The
anyway.
people, you see that little.
We
He
asked,
didn't have
Yeah.
to buy it.
No, over.
and and we kind of considered it non-viable.
Right
It was
there.
too small to be at home.
Those neighbors want to square off their yards. But that will cut out. So I can give you
That
some,
makes sense.
I can give you some feedback from some of the people that live in that R2 neighborhood right
Please.
there.
Yeah, this is your hood, huh?
That's my neighbor. That's where I live. And right now, in talking to a lot of the neighbors, there's a lot of concern. But interestingly enough, that most of their concern comes from, they just don't want apartments there. They haven't really expressed any disinterest with some type of commercial. I'll talk to them. I'll make sure they're aware of this. I think the best thing we can do is send to the planning commission. Let's get the public input. But overall, I would love to see some good commercial go along this pathway.
Most of
Agree with
the-
no apartments.
Most of these would not fit a big box store, but it would fit maybe a medium size, a strip mall, or it would fit a business office, professional office or services. And so, kind of like what we have across from City Hall here. If we had some of that, it would be viable.
So general commercial, one of the options is mixed use.
Yeah.
Which could lead to apartments, but what would the process be for getting a mixed use? approved?
The safety
Has to-
valve is
it
that
still has to
city
come.
council has to approve any
There's-
mixed
And the
use.
And does the
size
mixed use
of
have
it.
an acreage requirement?
Yeah, it
I
does.
don't
We
think
had
it's-
a-
And these are
had-
generally too small.
Yep. We had a
There's
pretty,
mixed use isn't allowed in general commercial zone.
I thought it was.
So where it gets confusing is in the general plan, there's a
Uh-huh.
designation of commercial that can encompass multiple
Oh.
zones. The actual zoning, which is like the end of the line, the permitted uses in the general commercial do not
Yeah,
include,
MXD is not in there.
do not
Okay,
include
so-
apartments. So if you
Public
look,
park, professional office,
the only
hotel,
situation that,
motels.
if you see something on this list that you wouldn't want to automatically go in there, you're like, oh, then you wouldn't want to rezone
So
it.
car
But if
washes
you're okay
wouldn't be
with
allowed
everything-
in, because this is in the town center.
Some of it is, yeah.
But it
But
says
they
car
could
washes,
go,
full service terminals.
like, if you didn't want somebody to build a gas station there, you wanted to build to have that. And gas stations are permitted use, they could just move forward without our
Amusement
say.
recreational.
And maybe that's
activities, there could
okay.
be
We're,
lagoon.
it would just fast
Yeah,
track commercial
okay.
development. We just
But
lose a
they're
little
not
bit of say in what.
Yeah, I mean,
Properties on the list, they got
I'm a
large
fan of
animal
having
that's looking for a
sending
spot.
it to. planning commission.
So that would be a
I mean, that's the
spot.
first step, is see what they say.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
they
agree
come
with
back
that.
with some
Let's
really
see what
good
they
stuff.
got.
Then we are gonna want to see the report on how it comes out.
Yeah,
That'll be interesting.
just send us the link with the timestamp that they talk about it, like how far in, and we'll go listen to it.
And then so if it goes to planning commission, there's gonna be public notice, so then
Yeah.
we get citizen input as well.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of public notice. We're gonna sell like
And
600.
Jordan and Seth
postcards out.
live near there, so they're gonna tell
Yeah.
people, and that's good.
Yeah.
We want their feedback.
I know every single one of them. Again, I'm the house just barely off the screen, and so I will be letting them know, and we, if they have any issues, we will make sure that the council is well aware of it.
What's that R1 space right there? Is that where that barn's sitting?
This,
Yeah,
so that detention basin's right there to the south, it's just kind of in the
I don't
middle,
know
there's a
what
bunch
the
of
barn- Yeah,
trees.
you don't know that big giant barn that's out
I
there
think
on the
that's
south
off
side of the road?
I know what you're talking about.
Is that on that one?
No, I don't think so. I think that's off to the. side
Relevant, it's
here.
got a vet looking to build a large animal hospital somewhere in that suitable.
Good.
I mean,
And it falls
They're
within that.
already
in theory, if we
Yeah.
get some professional office in here, it would help support the restaurants around the movie theater. And maybe we would get some more daytime population in here, because it's right off the freeway, so
Mhm.
I think it's got some potential.
I agree.
Yeah, there's not a lot of times you get a chance like this where there's just a new swath of
Yeah,
open land.
Right off a freeway exit.
Yeah.
right off the freeway exit, right.
I say yes.
Okay, so I'm getting the general, at least enough nods to send it to planning commission, so
Yeah.
that'll be the next step. Discussion of the West Davis Corridor landscaping design process. So they would like to begin. And when this first, we didn't really settle on this, so I guess the theory is that we already have the RFP and we've already given them some general guidelines. My first thought was, let's let them come back with some ideas and bring it to the full council. That's what I'd like to do. I know that takes a little bit more time, but I don't want to exclude anybody.
I would like to see something with like the native regrowth on there, see what they can do with that and see how that affects budget wise, if water wise, all the wise things.
Okay. Any other thoughts you'd like to take before they begin? Because again, my intention is to bring this back with some suggestions that everybody reviews.
I would love to see what they come back with. I want to be careful with plants, just because plants require a lot of maintenance. Even the xeriscape or xeriscapes.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you.
the xeriscape.
That was embarrassing.
No, I corrected myself. I nailed it.
Okay.
Glad you corrected yourself.
Yeah, good, I did that. That was awesome.
Good thing about native regrowth.
But yeah, I think it would be. I'd love to see what they come back with.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Are they looking for design inputs or kind of what we want to see?
Well, we gave them the sign concept,
Mhm.
which was part of the RFP. We gave them the designated project area, which was part of the RFP. We let them know what UDOT has put restrictions on, which is pretty limiting, actually. They limited to very strict parameters.
Can't do anything with the structures.
Yeah, so
Disappointing, just there.
we talked about that for years, but anyway. So with that said, is there any other feedback you'd like them to start with?
Otherwise, they're mind readers and
Well, I don't,
Yeah, we're gonna have a kickoff meeting, so we just wanted to get any preliminary input you have.
I mean, I think the sign was a good one. I would love to see art. I think anything we can do to kind of make it not suck.
okay.
joining us a little bit.
Yeah, that's my design criteria.
I would take an unsucky opportunity.
Yes. Yeah, and that would be the recommendation. No, that very much I want that to happen.
They're supposed
Say
to
that
have
again,
two or three, I think. I was just saying, I hope we have multiple options.
Multiple
Yeah.
concepts, not just one.
Cookie cutter kind of thing.
But just so FYI, because I think only Jordan was here or were you here, Lisa, when we hired him the last time? They came in with multiple proposals and we didn't even ask for it. So
For the splash pad?
yeah, for the splash pad, they came in with multiple proposals and asked us to give them feedback in multiple directions, which I liked.
Good.
It's almost like once you see something, then you can give
Yeah.
more. You can give.
Yeah, but if
more
you have an
weight to it.
idea off the top that maybe you might want
Yeah, I'm
to see
like.
anybody.
Or things you
Yeah.
absolutely do not want to see. So that's
We don't
helpful
want
too.
to see anything with heavy grass and water.
Okay.
Extra water. Yeah, that's
Good point.
very drought resistant things.
Okay, let me make sure I got all these down. We'll just make sure they're all commented.
Not sucky.
Non-sucky, drought resistant, native.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Multiple concepts. I will make sure that that's emphasized.
Yeah, low maintenance. Low maintenance. for sure.
And awesome.
Not
Not sucky,
sucky.
but we want it to be awesome.
Fantastically awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm really not
All right.
an interior designer.
So this, I don't know how, if it'll be January or February, but we'll bring back.
Okay.
And they'll probably come and be a part of that discussion.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Noah.
Okay, discussion regarding secondary water reservoir project funding.
In our last council meeting, if you recall, we had this project for the reservoir approved at 11 million. And the bid came out, the low bid came out at 14.5 million. So we went back to the design engineer and Vancom, the low bidder, to look for ways to economize and still make it a viable project that will still work for us. So we looked at different things like reducing the number of pumps, from 4 to 2, which will still operate fine, but there will be space so we can put those in the future, which was a good economical thing. Also, the type of pumps that was called out in the spec was somehow more expensive and took longer to get. So we looked at a different pump type, and then which would still work great for us. And then we also looked at having staff do some of the work. And I don't recall what it is, but it's stuff that we have expertise in doing. I think it's probably just some like concrete work or for the driveway and things like that. So anyway, in all of these measures, we could lop off about 2.3 million in savings. So it still put us, million over or 11 million. But on when you look at the different funds, so the Class C and the storm drain fund, we could make that whole by just delaying the 4000 West storm drain project, and just not doing that this year. And then that will make that whole so that we won't go in a deficit in those funds until those funds build up, and then we can do that project later. So then we're really just looking at secondary capital, secondary impact funds. So if we do this project as with the reduced scope for the 12 million, we could delay some projects that require secondary capital and impact 2 years, and we could still make this work. So that's probably one option that we could look at doing. Another option, if we want to try to reduce it more, we did look at making the reservoir smaller, going from 37 acre feet down to 24. It would just mean that we would need to build the reservoir in the future.
I really don't like that.
And that just reduced it
More expensive.
like 700,000.
And
So
we
it didn't get us
Reduced it,
there.
but probably will increase by triple
It
that.
was like
Yeah.
5% savings for
And you have to tear it
35%.
apart to fix it.
How do you feel about the cuts that they made in there? Like, what are your thoughts
I
on
feel
it?
like for that 12 million, I feel like the cuts were really good. They're still economical. Oh, the other thing was thickness of concrete. The design engineer kind of oversized it, the concrete walls to 9 inches, just because they felt like our equipment was going to be rolling up onto those side walls, whereas we don't, other than the spillway where we access it to clean it out. So they could reduce those down to 7.5 and still make some savings in concrete. So I mean, I still feel like
That's fuel
this
and
will still be a
everything,
good,
concrete.
this will still be a good project. The pumps are not in an enclosed house or anything like that, so it's just outdoor. It was already designed that way, so there's no, it's not like
So we
we're
can add.
reducing.
I
it.
kind of like staggering the installation of
So,
pumps, just so you're not
yeah.
pumping them all at the same time anyway.
So it would be like a
Right.
cut and splice kind of thing. Just put
It
it
would
in
be
there.
real easy, just in the future, we could just plop a pump in the electrical building. The panel will be there just empty, and they just have to bring the wires.
So we just prepare for it ahead, kind of like that.
Yeah.
Sure,
I say we move forward with that plan.
I agree.
I like that.
I like that.
And putting off the projects, we're not putting anything at risk. It's minimal risk, so
Yeah.
I think that's
You feel good about it.
Okay,
good.
so this is not approval. I just figured I'd
Right.
bring it to a work session, and so we can talk it, hammer it out, and then I'll put it on the January meeting for any budget opening revision, or I guess whatever meeting, I don't know. Some future meeting, and we'll
Future
just do a
meeting.
budget opening and reconcile it all.
okay.
Well, not to steer you away from this, but I just want to make sure you're aware that like one of the projects that would most likely be delayed is the 1000 West project. That's probably in our worst one, it's in pretty bad shape,
One of
but
our worst streets.
That is probably the worst.
So let me throw out one
You don't even
other
care.
option that.
Sorry.
we
It's
just-
my street. Thank you.
Okay, so let me throw out one other option. Because it's not a huge deficit in the project, I mean, $1 million is $1 million, so, but we could consider a bank loan for the difference, which would not have to put off projects like 1,000, but we would just pay it off over whatever the term of the loan is. The reason to do that is so that we get it at the price today and not the price 5 years from now, or that we don't have to do the other work at the price whenever we can afford it. So
Steve? Money guy?
My thoughts are this, $2.2 million. You have about $2.3 million in secondary water impact funds available. You're saying there's a deficit on the spreadsheet of 1.2 million. I think for that portion of it, we're probably okay. I say probably with the economic conditions we're experiencing to cover that. So my one concern with this whole project is the secondary operating fund. We're about $900,000 short of expectations here in our budget. Taking out a loan, if it's a short term, some of the things you gotta look at is we have a coverage ratio, which means based on what your debt payments are, you have to have 1.5 times, I believe, coverage in your revenue streams. We pretty much maxed that out with the bond that we've done for our secondary for the 8.060 million. If you get a bank loan, depending on the longevity of that, you could take that 900,000 and reduce it to 200,000 a year with a 5-year loan. In the grand scheme of things, it may not do that much for you as in terms of being able to do a project versus not.
Especially our interest rate would be sitting somewhere around
Oh, wow.
7%.
Maybe not that high, but
6.
better than.
But it's still high.
0.96 that we have right now.
well, it's just a consideration. It's not a, I mean, the concerns are we don't want to get behind like we were before. We did spend some time years ago really struggling to catch up on our roads. I hate to push them back again.
We could look at it and see it,
And we don't know. This really just came up tonight when I
Yeah.
was asking Brody. So we have not gone deep, and maybe we would discover that this is a bad idea.
Maybe there's some other street somewhere that I think we should go forward with this. And then figure out how to work with the roads moving forward. I mean, there's.
And maybe we can do it out of surplus. Maybe we can do it out of some other fund, but I just hate to put off. Yeah, I mean, 1,000 is one of our worst roads. I don't live near it. It's not one that I travel often, but it is bad.
Maintaining our secondary water is a big deal
What's
too.
what's the 1,000 project entail?
So that goes from the roundabout 2,700 going north up to about 2,075 south. There's just that last section left that was kind of just left undone, mainly because we needed to do a land drain main down that road, which we didn't have enough money for. So we've kind of been saving in the storm drain fund to get enough to do that road.
And it keeps getting very busy road.
We keep getting closer and then other things. And UDOT says, hey, we got a project or we have other types of things.
I drive 1,000. Mainly the traffic.
And if you fix, as soon as you fix that road, that traffic's gonna get worse.
And we were waiting for Sanders Park to open up before we shut the 1,000.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
didn't want
And
to.
it's.
Let's
great.
just ban trucks and electric vehicles from 1,000.
By electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles weigh as much as trucks. They're heavier than a regular car.
Those are the only two vehicles we have is trucks and
Electric
electric.
vehicles. I'm gonna get a best butter right around town. I swear.
Let me pull my wagon.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is we're gonna proceed with the project. We may have to decide on some funding issues in a future meeting when we have more of that wired up, but you're all in favor of going forward
Yes.
with the full project. Okay. All right, Ron.
But I mean, with a full project with those modifications.
Yeah.
that you've outlined.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
thanks
we're
for
not like
finding those.
making the pond more shallow. That's bad idea.
That's a big amount. That matters.
Okay. All right, next item is discussion regarding culinary water supply. Robert.
so this is just continuation of what we started talking about a little bit in the
So I
business
thought,
meeting.
so that one, in the business meeting, it was secondary water. This is culinary.
Yes, this is culinary.
Okay.
So our culinary water supply, it has been, we have a contract with Weaver Basin for a set volume. Every year it's 1925 acre feet annually. And we've been doing in on the graph on the next sheet down, there's a graph that shows you over the past 10 years in history, how we've been doing with that. We've been doing really, really well. Since 2020 and 2021, we hit our 100% in our contract water. The orange shows the well amount. So if we didn't have the well, right, we would be into some surcharges with Weaver Basin. So fortunately, the well's been helping us out with water production. The difference with this year is we are hitting into that 10% reduction. So we'll see a surcharge from Weaver Basin just from the drought reduction. But what I want to get at is our contract. We have not increased our contract amount. I don't know how long that 1925 acre feet's been in place, but even through all the growth, and then the last few years, we've seen more water use. Sure, some of it's population growth, but some of it's also people who are working from home now and using
was
that
interesting.
daytime
That's
water.
really true.
use.
That was
I
interesting,
go
yeah.
through so much
So,
more
yeah.
toilet paper when my husband.
No kidding.
There's some bathroom use going on. More than I realize.
Public record.
That's ridiculous.
Appreciate.
So, but what I wanted to get at is we looked at our water master plan and even if our well produces its maximum amount of water, we still have a need. We have a shortfall for 350 acre feet of water that we're not able to produce and provide. So if we wanted to, we could consider getting that 350 acre feet or requesting it, contracting with Weaver Basin up front now and putting off the ability to draw our well down more. That's another risk with our well is we're just relying on it being, and it has been reliable, but there's so many things, there are risks,
Several people on the west side, their wells have gone dry.
there's to just draw down and then if there's contamination,
We only have one.
we have
Operating.
one well, so if the well goes out, so
You should have
so
said
to
it.
rely only on the well, it's a little bit of a risk. So but like I say, fortunately our well's been producing.
So what are your thoughts,
really well.
council?
So yeah, I'm just wondering if you'd like for me to discuss with Weaver Basin.
Adjusting our contract.
Yeah, increasing
Yeah.
before, because prices are gonna go up
Increase
after their February 2nd meeting.
Definitely.
So doing that, do we gotta talk to them about just the 350 or do we gotta talk to them about more than 350?
I know they're gonna want to have us justify in numbers for the amount. And I think 350 seemed when for what requests they're getting from others, cities, 350 seemed like a pretty high amount to them. So
So even that, even
Even
if we
that.
come in with data, we're not gonna necessarily convince them that we should be greedy and go for the.
I just would have to back it up with numbers, and 350 is a really easy way to back it up. I'd love to get more, but I can definitely back up 350 with.
If we start there, and then I still think we need to buy low flow spigots to hand out at Heritage Days.
Did you say
And-
spigot?
Spigot.
Is it spigot or spigot?
I don't know.
It's a G.
The age-old
You're right.
question.
It's a G. Yeah.
Spigot.
Gotta get a little country.
Yeah,
with
I
it.
would support you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Conversation.
So I could bring a draft contract back at your January meeting and you can look it over for approval and then it can be ready for their board meeting in
So if
February.
they raise rates in April, we purchase ahead of time, do you in perpetuity hold that rate or do you
Yes.
get, okay?
You hold the
So-
rate, but the O and M goes
It moves
up
us,
like
yeah.
3 or 4% each year, so.
Let's
that
get it
it's
to
not
them as soon
like-
as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, sooner is better.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
sounds like you got direction, so. Okay, the next one is mine, and I added this to the agenda, discussion of possibly changing our format. what we've done the last two meetings is we've held the business meeting and come back here for work session. We could do that every night, every meeting. There are advantages and disadvantages of that. And I'm going to let staff talk to a few of them had mentioned that they have feelings about whether we should or shouldn't do this. We have to call special business meetings occasionally because we have items that can't wait. This would relieve that. This is not necessary. This is just a what if. I know that when we moved to switching business meetings and work sessions alternating, it was because we used to have work sessions ahead of business meetings, and work sessions were a complete waste because we would just repeat in business meeting everything that we said in the work session. So we got away from that, and that was good, and I think it has been well received. So we could continue the way we are and be just fine, or we could do a hybrid meeting every time like we've done the last two meetings. So let me allow, Cassie had some feelings on this. I want to give her a chance to speak, and so did Noah in our meeting. So I want to give both of them a chance to talk to the pros and cons, and then it's up to you.
Yeah, my input to the mayor when we talked about this a little bit in our department head meeting was just that I think that there could be a need for the type of format that we have tonight if we had a major backlog of applications or other items that are moving through, the review process. But honestly, just based on workload, agendas, minutes, I really don't feel like there's been a demand for it. I think this format obviously works well in a month where we're trying to consolidate everything into one night to observe a holiday, or, in November, we were observing election day. And so we moved our meeting around a little bit. But just from my perspective, based on volume and agenda items, I don't really know that it's necessary. And I expressed to the mayor, since he has been in this position, it seems like meetings have been a little bit more efficient. I think in the past, we had a lot of maybe planning items, development specific applications that took a long time to get through the process. They were on work session meeting after work session meeting, and there was some frustration expressed by different applicants that it was taking them so long to get an action on their applications. But I just don't think that's happening anymore. And so I just I don't know if it improves efficiency at all to do this type of meeting format every single month. And when it comes to calling special meetings after work sessions, we have had some instances of that this year. Mostly that has been for going into a closed session after a work session. And really those aren't, public items. The public's not coming to a meeting to observe you make a motion to go into a closed session, right? So it's not super important. We have had a couple other things that had to have action on an off meeting night. One of them was when you guys talked about the crossing guards staffing, and then another one was when you voted on the amendment to the garbage collection agreement this past year. So I don't want to sound like an obstructionist if there really is a push to go in that direction. I just don't know, just from my perspective, managing and publishing the agendas, that there really has been a demand for it. So.
Noah, you had some other thoughts.
Well, I think this would be a really good change. I guess you get both perspectives. The way we do business is we send things always to a work session and then to a vote session. So if you did it just like you did tonight on every time, it would keep applicants from waiting. Sometimes there's as much as a month delay where they might be done with planning commission, but then they have to wait for a work session to come, and then they have to wait again until the voting meeting comes. So this would make it so they, we just have a little bit more flexibility when we're planning out things. The planning commission does it this way, and it works well. It would make it more uniform between the two bodies. They actually don't move into the conference room anymore, though. They just do it all in the chambers. But they always have it after. And so sometimes if something's on a work session, and the business meeting takes a long time, you don't know exactly when you'll get to the work session. But most of the time, people are more than happy to wait a couple hours till the business is over. If it means they don't have to wait extra month to get to the item. So that's why I think it would work well, but it's up to you guys.
Brody?
Point, yeah. As far as work sessions go specifically, I like discussing issues when you can, and when they're needed. There's a logistical issue that I think we struggle with sometimes. You may not see it because we're coordinating with the people that are coming to the meetings. So for example, tonight, Ashley, we didn't know what time she was going to be on because we didn't know how long the business session was going to last. And so when she asks, what time do I need to log on? I really don't have an answer for her other than after 6 o'clock, sometime after 6. And so just out of respect to people that are coming from the outside to attend a work session during the night of a business session, it does get a little complicated, or just respectful of their time, that they're not sitting there for 2 hours waiting for us to get done with our business session before they come on.
Well,
During a regular work session, it's not an issue because the meeting starts at 6, but
And we do try to schedule, if somebody's coming from out, traveling, we try to put them towards the first of the meeting so that they know when they're coming and they can leave when they're done.
Sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just gonna say there have been times too with that same scenario where we've had an item on a work session following a business meeting, and there's things that can come up in a business meeting that dictate the length of the meeting that are really out of the control of anyone in the meeting.
Like public comment.
Yeah, and so, I mean, we've had times where we've come into the work session afterwards and half of the items get pushed. And so then those people have sat through, I think it's been mostly with like department deep dives and a couple other items, but I know there was one time when it feels like the fire department's deep dive got pushed like several times because
We're sorry.
we're at a late hour. So yeah, I think like Brody said, just out of respect for the time of the people that are trying to participate in public meetings, it's better to provide some structure.
Yeah, so I actually enjoy having work sessions more frequently because some items you can get to faster that way. But that is an issue that I think we struggle with.
So really, it's up to you. Do you see an advantage either way, council? Because we don't have to make any changes. We could.
I like it either way, but I do like changing rooms just because my ADHD benefits from that. Seriously, I mean, it is what it is. I
And
can
we
pay
would still
attention
do
better.
that.
I think without making an official change, we always reserve the right to hold these when there is like an absolute need, like
Yeah.
elections or holidays or anything. But at the same time, like I see where you're coming from, Noah. I think the economy has shifted so much lately that there's so many factors that are, relating to why things are slowing down and changing and different structures in here and everything. So I don't know, I would be inclined to leave it as is for now. And then when the need arises,
Push for it, like add an
Pretty
extra, like we do now, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
We do
think
that.
that we've kind of done that. And when we've seen that somebody's been waiting too long to have something addressed, we tend to say, let's get this decided for them and have call a special work session. I can see the issue with having people wait for hours to be heard and sometimes we're just sick to death of, sometimes we've been talking and hashing for so long that we push, or we'll either not give it much discussion because we've got to the end of our ropes, or we'll push it to the next meeting. So I think I would tend to say, keep it where it is right now and continue with the option of having a work session if we need to. If we find that we have a bunch of things coming up that aren't being resolved, then we could look at it again, but I don't think that's the case right now.
I think staying consciously aware of what on the business meeting is gonna take up a lot of time, or like we knew some of those things were gonna take some time, and we knew it was gonna take time to get us through it before we got to the other meeting. We shouldn't double stack them when we know.
if the economy were to pick up next year, we could always revisit this if you're good where we are today. That's fine. I just thought it was worth bringing to your attention.
Thank you to you guys for chiming in. It's always important to know what you guys think. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, there's lots of times where I thought exactly what you thought because of having been there in planning commission for 2 years. Just about how quickly we can get through a public hearing and then followed by feedback and a discussion, and then they can weigh in and they table things a lot still. But besides that, you know, I've definitely had that thought, but it just hasn't seemed like we've been inundated with planning related items like we have historically.
So what I'm hearing is to keep it as is. And-
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
And unless there's a
Something comes
combined
up.
meeting,
Something-
unless there's a month where
reason.
you only have one meeting.
Okay,
You retain the
and
option.
we
Yes.
always have that option. Okay, so we're gonna now move into our strategic goals discussions part 2. And I'm gonna let Brody lead off with this, starting with city services.
Yeah, so the survey that went out was interesting because we kind of had almost the exact opposite response from our department heads as we did from our elected.
So I was like, it's flipped,
I feel
like we're out of department heads and with
Almost
the council.
almost exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so the
Well, somebody.
after further, we will soon find out who it is. No. After, some follow-up discussion with some department heads, I think some of it might have been in semantics of how the question was worded. So, I can take some responsibility for that. But for example, in talking to some department heads, they answered it in terms of just sort of like on general issue, generally speaking, continued investment in staff compensation as we have been.
I think it's remaining competitive.
Is top priority. Like we can't like lose ground on that and slide lower and lower in our benchmark. So it wasn't necessarily that like in the upcoming year, this is the most important thing. Now, for some of them, it may be, but for several that I talked to, it was more of like, generally speaking, like the new policy we adopted, just don't back off the policy. And that's kind of top priority.
And as I read the question, my thought was that now that we have this policy in place, if we hold to it, we don't need to emphasize it because it's done.
Right.
And so we need to emphasize other.
I think that
Like the last
explains,
one we held to.
I think that explains some of the difference.
Yeah,
There are some department heads who additional employees is still an issue.
Which ones?
So, and we can talk about
We'll get
that.
to
But,
that.
Third of them, I'd say.
I think more, maybe more importantly at first, what was the thought from the council's answers that we could, two-thirds of the mayor and council said improving working conditions would be.
I'll be honest, it's been so long since we've taken the survey. I'm like trying to imagine what improving working conditions are
So-
like. I mean, like less snow.
So it can be, yeah.
Shade
I
for
mean,
the
it's like-
lawnmowers
It
or
could be, improvements to equipment, improvements to workspace.
I probably was in the
you know,
minority.
scheduling.
I'll be honest. I probably prioritized additional employees. I'll just be straight up.
So you were that weirdo.
I was probably that 20.
I was the higher compensation,
Yeah,
without a doubt.
yeah. So I mean, that's just.
So, yeah, we can either talk about that or we can talk about maybe what the department heads, why they were.
So I
putting
mean,
their
so
priorities in.
I guess just to justify where I came in on this, when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, so we did this addressing of the compensation with the policy and made a lot of headway there. And I think that'll, because if we adhere to that, we'll stay on track there. And then improving working conditions. I don't know the nuances of that and how well I can get into the details of there, but by providing adequate staffing for that, I feel like
That helps.
that will improve morale, release burdens, all that stuff, so that over time that will yield improved working conditions. And I think that's inevitable growth. And just the fact that anytime we adjust staffing levels, we never do what is requested or what is required, we do what we can. And so that's never going to be, that'll be a tail chasing activity for the rest of our lives, I feel. I mean, that's just until build out and then we've somehow meet equilibrium. I don't think you ever get there.
and to be clear, we don't have specific requests from department heads yet. That will come for the next phase of the budget discussion. right now, this was just kind of set direction so that they knew from what perspective to lay out,
So can we get an idea from them of what improved working conditions from their individual like departments would be?
They
Do
didn't
we
even
know?
say it. Well, they didn't department heads put it at
They put
0%.
compensation.
None of them.
Yeah. If the compensation's on point and they get their people, okay? So what about what's next after that? It would be improved working conditions. So if we have an understanding of all three, then we know what we're looking at.
Or maybe it's because there's only 3 options. And they had to put it through.
I mean, they're gonna come with requests. We don't
You know
have
what I
them yet, so it's hard to say.
So make requests so we know.
Well, that will come. That's the
Oh,
next step.
yeah.
I justify where I was at. What do you guys think?
To be honest, can't remember what I put,
I
so
mean, it's-
I don't
you should-
even
I
know.
know, I can't remember my response.
I don't know.
I probably.
But I will always bow to the actual department heads to know what the morale of their employees is and what they feel like is needed. So I think that whatever we're suggesting is secondary to what they think is necessary.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is we'll let them come with the requests and see what they are
Yeah.
and evaluate them there.
You guys look like over there, like,
Yeah,
We didn't ask them to be prepared for that.
No.
yet.
the point of the discussion is on paper in the survey, it begged, we needed to
Have a talk.
We had to dig in a little more
discuss
on
this.
what this-
But
Yeah,
it's a flip flop from us to them.
So when
Yeah.
they gave the presentation at the last budget, when you gave it actually, and you brushed over it ever so elegantly. I like it because you don't want to upset anybody, Brody. I saw that. It was like money, it was first, like their compensation was first. And then right after we jumped straight to working conditions in that budget meeting. Did we not? When we were talking about pay and things like that on the presentation you gave. But we've never really discussed anything past that, what improved working conditions or employee morale is. So it kind of just stopped at that budget meeting when we talked about it.
So are you asking like, what does that entail?
Yeah, like what does it all
I mean,
entail?
some of it was like wellness programs and benefits.
Yeah.
improvement.
And we
we
addressed the benefits. I know that.
Yeah, we investigated it. To see
And
if
they're
there-
basically saying, no, nobody's saying that's their first priority. They're all saying that's last.
out of the 3.
Mhm.
3. yeah.
I don't think it's that odd to see this
I
kind
think we
of,
could add 4, 5, or 6. So
see the difference between council and staff, because staff is in the trenches, right? And they're like, okay, and we're having to look at it from a budgetary perspective most of the time. And it's like, we just know there's not an unlimited.
We're like, it wouldn't cost much to have better employee morale,
Yeah.
but it costs a lot more.
Well, I mean, it's.
Yeah,
It's true, like-
I mean, our uninformed perspective.
when we looked at, working conditions, to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. For example, last year, we did a series of, stay interviews. To try to see why do people stay? Or why would they consider looking elsewhere to work? And, one of the top things that we found was, people stay for the people they work with. There's that camaraderie and loyalty with their coworkers and, becomes like a second family, so to speak. And so that's one of the reasons people stay. And so, we look at how can we support an environment that kind of engenders those relationships amongst coworkers. And so wellness program was one. And we are starting one this year. It's very bare bones because we don't have much of a budget, but a wellness program has that ability. It's just one example, but it has that ability to get employees to do something together that's a little bit different than their regular jobs, and they actually can improve their relationships with each other. And therefore, it actually, not only does it help them become a better version of themselves, but it also helps the city retain employees, which is our goal in our policy. And so, things like that can be good investments to help improve working conditions, things like that. As one example.
And shade.
Yeah, I mean, like literally when they're on the job. what do they need to improve that condition?
Well, it's appropriate equipment. It's.
Yeah, well, that's,
Yeah.
can you guys have a list? Can we have a list?
You'll get one. I don't.
I'm not asking for it right now. I just need
Yeah,
it.
if the
I
council,
think they understand.
if the council feels that those things are worth entertaining in the budget, then those are the types of things we can look at proposing.
60% of us thought it was worth looking into.
Okay,
Right.
so let's move on to Parks Master Plan goals.
Okay.
Thank you.
Y'all, you guys have your things, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
that She's got.
Yes.
Zoom in on this one.
You are. Was there anything after the rest of that, the city events and stuff we were supposed to talk about? After.
We are.
That'll be
That's
next.
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
oh,
So
Isn't that
I'll just start off here again. We had our pre-retreat survey. It was interesting, the results, because there were so there's 10 goals in our parks plan. And in the survey from the council and mayor, there were 2 of the 10 that had a solid consensus. And what that tells us is that those are 2 areas where we can actually get something done. Because if we try to, not that we can't do the other 8 goals, when opportunities arise, we should accomplish those goals because they're all our adopted goals. But as far as priority for budgeting and that sort of thing, the 2 that came to the top where we feel like we can actually, move the needle is ensure that parks and facilities are safe, clean, and well maintained and operations are efficient. And number 2 is provide enough space for city programs, sports, and activities with additional room for growth that can be rented out until it's needed by the city. All other goals either had a mixed, kind of a mixed priority 1, or there was consensus that it was not a top priority. And so we felt like we could focus on those 2, kind of just take that momentum and run with it. So we've Krista and her team have taken those 2, applied that to our 5-year parks plan, and we've got some ideas of how to incorporate those goals into the 5-year plan.
Yep, and we didn't put any money here because I know that's a huge part, but what we really wanted is like priorities. Like what we're seeing is what you guys envision also, or if there's some things that you want switched around. When I'm hearing that with, the priorities of the programmable space, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking of, all of the designing Legacy Park, the rest of Legacy Park, because that's going to be more passive. So that's what we're kind of, as we're going down through
Or
this.
every time there's like a flash in the pan.
Or ever there's a flash in the pan, then we're like, oh, let's just do this and go.
We're
you
all
know?
good together.
We've been working on this.
So that's where we kind of want to focus is what our priorities are. So we put on there what we've got going on this year already. And there's a lot. We have a lot of projects going on right now. But the stuff in green is stuff we've never talked about. And, maintaining was one of the biggest things. And as you guys know, I'll just hit on Chloe's first. Chloe's surface. Like you guys get complaints about that all the time.
Probably of the parks, that's the most consistent I get, but it's
Yeah.
the same for you guys.
Yeah,
Just
and we've been looking at that and we've done all the patching that we can do. It's time to replace it.
agree.
We're looking at different options to do that. We did look at the pour in place again, because, well, because we had another company come in.
Oh,
And the way that the other stuff was laid down and done is why we're having so many issues.
bad weather conditions, right?
Yeah, there's bad weather conditions and just how it bonded together. And so the company that we had come in was kind of shocked that it's in the state that it's in. So we're still going to bring other options to the council. And that's where like the 250 came from, because those options, that was kind of the highest. We want to do that this year and get that done this spring, because really we may be looking at shutting it down until we do, because it's a safety concern. The other one is, we've been talking about the cemetery. We sold the cemetery land. We have that money out there that we keep sharing everywhere, but eventually everybody has ideas of where that cemetery money should go.
It's been spent.
Yeah, so we have,
It's been spent about 5
let's
times.
design it. So that's what we want to do this year. We had a contract and we've done the concept design before, but now it's actually going in and designing it. We've got that quote back and it was 20,100, which is for the design, the engineering, and for the construction documents. And with that said, then we would put the cemetery, actually developing cemetery. We'll give it a year and then in 2025, we'll
I have a
do
question
that.
for you.
Yeah.
When are we expecting to sell our last plot in our listing cemetery?
Well, we have about 400 plots left and we sell close to 100 a year. So we've really got to get
4
going.
years,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we've got to get,
Perfect.
and we have a lot in there that people have bought in the last year with COVID and stuff, but
Pre-purchase.
Expecting to.
yeah. Well, I just think that it was kind of shocking and they came in and bought, big ones. And there's different things that we can do if we decide where it's like, can't buy if we're not, quite there, can't buy a plot unless someone passes away. That's like what Farmington does. They don't let you come in and buy large amounts to hang on
That's
to.
actually.
Can't hold them.
next to your roads.
I know.
You're exactly right, Jen.
Yeah.
because
Could there be
there's-
something about that? Like you, if
There's
someone
been
wants to
people
pass my
wanting
way.
bigger plots than we've got
Yeah.
because there's not enough next to each other.
That's
So
a
why-
reality TV show. right
That's
there.
why we're doing it now. That's why we're
People
expanding.
can't, like, when one member passes away, their spouse could buy the plot at that time also to ensure they're
Yeah.
next to each other.
That's what we do
That's
now.
good.
Yeah.
That's
No,
good.
we're just saying that's what
How
some
sad
of the
if they don't
things
get
that
to be
people
buried
had to
next to each
do,
other.
cemeteries have had to do because they're running out. That's
Yeah.
why we want to expand and get going because
That's
we are getting
unfortunate.
down to.
Well, it sounds like it's very opportune if there's down to 4 years left. of
Bare
purchase.
bones, literally.
Literally.
They will be bare bones, not covered.
We'll start burying people under trees.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Oh, no.
And then we have you guys, the park maintenance facilities coming along nicely. If you guys want to drive
Oh, it
down
is.
through that, we're really excited about that. But with that comes equipment like the lifts and other things that come with that. And so that's going to have to be in here, whether it's in this year or the beginning of next year, just to put that out there so that you guys know it's coming along.
What's the anticipated completion date again?
They're actually looking at the middle of May, that May 24th would be like move-in date. The 1st of May is when like checklist, but right now they're ahead of schedule, but we'll see.
Cool.
Awesome.
So it makes sense to have
Yeah.
the end of this.
So in the coming year, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to,
Yeah, we got.
we gotta outfit it with all the stuff that it needs,
Yeah, and we can obviously push that down if it ends up, there's delays or something, we can push that back, but just want you guys to know about that. All the other projects are in the works. Your Stoker, Rock Creek.
Stoker gonna have.
BMX, it is. We actually are getting ready to bid that out. There's just a few other things that's got going on, so.
There's a lot on this list.
There is, but
Good for
that,
you
look how
guys,
much you already had budgeted for this year. And we have moved stuff down, but next year looking at, and as you guys know, we're trying to pick a park to kind of go and to renovate and to make all those updates. Fremont Park is still on our list and we pushed it down from last year. And so that's one of the things that we're going to work on this year to kind of complete with the pavilion replacement, the playground, central scroller, but that's where it also comes into 2024 that we wanted to talk to you guys about that very last item, because there are some decisions we need to make about a dog park, because if we decided to put the dog park down there at Fremont Park on that long strip, we should kind of do that at the same time that we're trying to do that.
That's a perfect spot for one.
It is.
Anybody gets bit, fire department's right there. Let's be honest, like what else is gonna happen there? Dog bite or humans get in a fight, and the cops are pretty quick.
What about noise? I mean, I know that's like obviously right in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concern that we brought
Near
up.
the freeway.
Would it be
I mean,
closed?
freeway
Would it have
can go
hours of
right there.
operation, close at dark? or
Noise from
Yeah, it
there.
would close.
At dark, and that prevents nighttime noise ordinances.
Stupid one right now.
So it's right behind those houses.
Yeah.
And so we can dictate the ordinances for the park hours and all that, whatever we want to do. You can put, trees and other stuff, but yeah,
I'm
that's
just thinking
gonna
like we're
concern.
talking about ordinances where you have to have like 100-foot separation between kennels for 4 dogs, but then we're gonna bring like 100 dogs behind somebody's wall.
So like,
But it's not to stay, it's for like an hour to 20.
I was
Do they,
gonna
because they're
say,
engaged.
you have that one
Yeah.
right by, right.
Marlowe?
Marlowe.
Should we-
Yeah.
I'll go listen. I've never.
You
paid
should. I've
attention.
actually been over there when it's got
It did not
20,
do that.
30
They're
dogs.
always
It's not
good.
bad at all.
Because
I've
they're like
never
playing with
thought
each other.
about
Yeah,
noise.
I've never-
The people
we
cause
pass
more of
by
a
it a
ruckus
lot.
than the
The
dog.
more dogs that are there, the less they bark at each
Yeah.
other because they're,
Don't
Yeah,
play
I
it.
don't, they don't.
dogs
seem
tend to bark when
bark.
they've got a fence between them, not when they can touch each other.
They're
It's
just
like,
kind of
Kinda like
sniffing
people.
bums.
Preston, do we program Centennial?
Kind of like people. Yeah.
No, because it's in a detention
By the wall.
basin.
That's what I thought. Is there,
Everything's up behind the wall.
I guess what I'm kind of curious about is, would we rather, I'm assuming the booster pump is to try and keep the grass green.
The booster pump is, I don't know if you've ever done been at Centennial Park.
It's pretty
like-
bad. I'm just wondering
There's
if
so much wear and tear over there because of
the splash
the
pad.
splash pad, that it's very, very, very difficult when the pressure's down to take care of that and make sure. We don't want to end up having to come back and replace.
And I actually suggested that we maybe bring booster pumps forward for other parks, because the more we can get water during the right times, the less we have to water during midday.
Yeah.
And those
the less
pumps are
people
well
cry.
worth it.
I was just curious, that they bring a compelling reason, it's expensive to replace, but I was gonna say, if we're looking for programmable space, I'd almost rather spend the 40,000 on the Legacy Park, well, not Legacy Park.
Linda,
Linda Vista.
because Linda Vista, we do program, and that's where a lot of people will
Yeah.
actually rent
Yeah.
our space. We don't really, we have football there, but we don't really program there, but we have people that rent out that space.
So that would be more of a
Still
beneficial.
our priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, we don't have this on here, but our really top priority will be Founders Park, which we've found some money possibly that we would do that, but we're trying to see if we have enough electrical that can carry that. We want to do that this year, because Founders Park, Rock Creek, which we just did, those are big parks that we do a lot of programming on, that we want booster parks
Let's
in.
make sure we're taking care of those really well.
One of the things that Chad brought up that I thought was really great was these restrooms that were kind of tearing down, like Stoker, there's no hope for that. Founders Park, there was no hope for that. But instead of, when we were looking at like Fremont Park and Canterbury Park, really thinking, we got to get new bathrooms. But what he said is the bones are good. Like, let's just do some renovation, which is, $30,000, $40,000. We don't have to deal with any of the plumbing and stuff.
Put a big camera up there.
Yeah.
Building's
camera.
good. It's the pictures.
Yeah, it's the fixtures and the
Yeah.
things inside that are nasty and gross. So that's what we're looking at when we do these parks, is just renovating our restrooms, because that's a big complaint that we get, is the restrooms, and there's nothing really we can.
Just tear everything out,
we can do.
power wash the whole place and.
And that's what
When the bones are good, the bones are good, right?
Yeah,
I know.
you can put good,
I
better
feel-
flooring
I feel like
down.
we should put a sign that says, there's a camera hidden in this room. You don't
Guess
know where
where?
it is.
Lawsuit.
Yeah.
Not do that in restrooms.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure it's like, anything that's on the news, it's never good.
You don't need that.
This is a great.
You've never had free tagging so fast. That's what
I'm talking about.
Hey, sure.
I didn't really say we would do that. I think it would be a fun thing
She
to
said,
do. I should do that. We really should. But we're
Right?
I'm just glad I had a good line of sight.
I know. We're not gonna do that.
Well, North Canterbury kind of goes into our programmable space, because I don't know if any of you guys have, I know that you have, you practiced and done stuff on there. For us, it's not gonna take a lot of money to regrade that. But it's unsafe for people to go and practice. We do not program on it, but people practice on it, and it's a liability issue for the city. And so we need to take care of that. And I know that you.
The mosquitoes there are just awful, and I
Yeah,
think it's because of
because
the
it's in a
moisture that sits
detention
there
basin.
now.
And
Yeah.
can we rename it? I hate having two Canterbury parks. The first.
I don't know why they ever
was
did it. I think
Okay,
it's.
so let me just
I
give
told you
you
last
some
time.
history there. We brought that up a few years ago, and
Mosquito vapor
apparently
comes
there's some
Fairfield.
people that are really passionate about
We need to request it.
the name of that, and the people who built that sign as an Eagle project. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that when we tried to name it, because we had two Canterburys the last time, there was like some pushback.
I say
Couldn't
we
we
name it like
relocate the one
the
sign to
ditch
the other
at
one?
North Canterbury.
We have a South Canterbury. We have, at Canterbury, we just call it Canterbury Park. Canterbury.
Can we just relocate
Because
the
then-
sign to save it?
Lose the name.
Make sure it's.
It says North Canterbury. It's not-
I mean, we are
Yeah,
gonna
we
be
get
using
them
new
over.
signs.
Put it on
Yeah,
the
we are
north
getting new
side.
signs for all of our parks.
It's okay. This is not, I'm just saying that there was.
I agree.
pushback.
It needs to be.
Just given history.
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
throw it on the north side of South
Yeah.
Canterbury.
It's caused a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could say me Canterbury.
Yeah.
North side of the park.
Just put it on the
south side
north
of the
side,
park.
yeah.
There are people who get lost trying to go to one of the Canterbury.
I know.
Straight from each
but
other.
really?
Oh.
Side-
Oh,
North
that's
side.
exciting.
Side.
And so,
All right.
One conversation.
get irrigation replacement and regrade that way. another place that we can actually program and rent out and stuff.
So we're
We
actually gonna
probably
make it
won't
not,
program out
we
of it,
don't
but
do it. I just wonder if we don't do it ourselves, which is so small.
it's so
Yeah,
small, but you could use
people
like
beat it
football
up,
practices.
you know?
Yeah, well, they're
If we
supposed to
rent it.
rent.
If we
And the
rent it,
problem is right now, we don't rent it because there are liability issues. And so when people ask, we say, we don't want you playing on that park because of the detention basin.
Okay.
So that people aren't, but if they came to us and said, we want to rent this space, we could allow them to. We wouldn't
we're gonna
program
fix it a
because,
little bit.
yeah, we want to redo the irrigation because it's terrible and then regrade it. There's lots of holes out there.
So you'll
Even if you
smooth it
fill
out.
them in,
So you'll have a detention basin over here, but you'll be able to make
Yeah,
some
grade
of, some
it.
of it usable.
you'll be able to grade it so
Okay.
that it's,
Well, and one thing that's
it's
just
like this.
been on my mind is just like, as it will be probably pretty heavily trafficked once like the temple's complete and everything, it might behoove us to make it even
Better.
somewhat nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because I'm sure people want to do.
Yeah, that's
pictures
true.
and just-
That's really true.
I mean, it's the only thing we have close to there right now.
Throw a Bowery in there.
Yeah,
That
besides
might be the whole
Canterbury.
thing if it's a.
I don't see horse arena on here for the,
So that's something that you guys can talk about and put it on, but when we discussed it last time, that's not why it's here. It wasn't a priority. So we can put it on.
I thought they were redoing the ground.
So we're with the BMX part, we're redoing the around.
It's part of the same.
It's
So,
kind of the
yeah,
part of the
it's-
same.
It's the inside of it that isn't.
We have dirt that we can put in, but we have not had a
They're still working on the
discussion.
conditioner stuff of it.
Yeah, we have not had the discussion of if we are gonna excavate that and do that kind of stuff. So we can talk about that. It's just not been something the council's told us to do, so that's why it hasn't gone on the.
I think right now we are doing, it's not on this list, but we are doing a lot out of the horse arena. We're putting in restrooms, we're putting in parking lot, we're putting in, we're improving the road in there. Now, there's more to do.
Yeah, they're doing. the
But we
conditioning
gotta
of
get
the
a
ground
5-year
and things
plan.
Like that too, but it needs to, yeah, have a better idea of what's going on out there. So it's not just swept away.
It needs a new sign too.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think we gotta throw it in a 5-year plan.
We're gonna tie that, pull that
Well,
horse.
Canterbury
We're
horse
sorting it out.
Park signage in general is on here. It's just not for each park.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we don't know what you guys have all decided on for that. So once we get that, then we can go on. So if you guys are okay with that, kind of the direction, now just know that once we get the money issue, things may be shifted around and, pushed down and other things, but
this is our wish list. Is what you're
this is
saying.
the wish list. And now if we had all the money, then this is how we would want to kind of do it because of like the condition that things are in the park. And I'll be honest with you, I hear when we did the bond, what people said was, we're not voting for a regional park until our other parks look good and taken care of.
That was very.
Yeah,
That was very prevalent. And so for us, like, that's the thing that we want to get done, because eventually we do want that for programmable space. That's not going to happen until we do those kind of things.
Do you have phase 1 of a regional park on this plan?
If you go down into,
I thought I saw it.
yeah,
I
it's
just-
in there. It's not.
It's on
it's-
2025.
Yeah, 2025. That's kind of more about the engineering, and you started discussing again. I'm gonna be really honest with you guys, because that was a priority. But I think that we have to be honest with ourselves with the tax increase that we had and the tax increase that we may have again. But that's not something you guys are gonna be willing to go back and bond for.
No.
Well, I
And
think
so
we're
if
maxed
that's,
out on bonding.
it is.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're leveraging.
And so the other options are, you can phase, but then we gotta look at like where we're at right now with the economy and if that's gonna, so that's why we pushed it down. It's not something we should be discussing this year.
No.
And next
Agree,
year.
agree.
Although we wanna, all of us want it, I know that. And it is gonna help our goal of programmable space. We just have to be realistic. And that's what I think I've been trying to say for the last few years is like, yeah, I know it's a priority, but we need to be realistic on what we can actually do. Yeah, so that's why we pushed it down.
So to hit that priority of having expand our programmable space and having enough, the items in here that we do have, we talked about North Canterbury. In
Lights.
in the later years, in 2027, adding lights to Founders, it actually is
Extends
the
program.
equivalent, it's the equivalent of adding programmable space because you can play longer on that space. So
Yeah, and we playing
Games go till
flag football at night. It was awesome. Those lights are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one we put down to 2025, and we have some other ideas that we didn't put in here yet, that we'll bring up when we start talking about that of what we can do at Founders Park, because to us, that's kind of our regional park. That's what we've got to
That's
get.
what we
That's
said
what
when
we
we
use.
invested
Yeah.
a few years ago, said if we're not gonna be able to do it, let's make this the best we can.
Yeah, so in 2025, that's gonna be one of our top priorities is to really look at Founder's Park and get the lights. And that's not just at the base on the football field, that would be on like the
Yeah.
baseball fields, so we can have our baseball going longer.
Would it make any sense to move that up higher? Or is it just,
We can, I think it does, but what we want to do is really plan what we're gonna do with Founder's Park. And then come
just
back
like
to you
the
guys,
expand
not, yeah.
final?
So as long as we know that's a priority and we know that that's a priority that we need programmable space, if we can figure out the money issue, then we can move it up and bring it back to you guys on what we'd like to do.
So does that seem like it kind of hits the priority?
I think this is gonna make a lot of citizens happy. I'm seeing, it'll bring a little bit of normalcy to the city for a while, just seeing the current stuff being worked on and fixed and not more stuff being tracked into the city. Just work on what we got.
Can I say the updates to Jensen? I went over and looked at them. Looks good.
What'd you do?
The shoreline.
The
Oh,
shoreline.
I've
still
been
have
there.
some-
Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah, we
wonderful.
still
I just already got over
I
that.
want-
Are we gonna,
yeah.
do we have to stain those split rail?
We haven't,
posts?
that's not how they were meant to do, but I'm eventually will probably have to do that, and that's just obviously.
And then I'm still excited for the dock.
Yeah, that's been a challenge because people don't want to like build them and bring them, so it's been a big.
People don't want to what?
Build them? Well, they do, but
I thought this
we'll
was a
talk about
floating
this.
dock.
It
Anyway.
is, but you still have to ship it.
So
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, life is always more complicated than on black and white. So the issue that continues to happen out there is land is being gobbled up for private development. And as the city grows, so grows the demand for parks. So there are going to be moments, and we're actually going to talk about, is that on there tonight? We've talked in the past about properties we need for a fire station, but there's properties similar to that will come available. And if the city may have to either pick them up, buy them, or pass on them, and then they'll get developed probably for, a housing subdivision or something, and then it's gone. So there's always that complicating factor of planning for the future, even though you're trying to handle what's going on and the demands of today. So
Story of our lives.
yeah.
So I want to keep us moving along. Community events. Let's touch on that.
Okay, yeah, this was another one where there was like really a strong consensus. It seemed from the survey. We had 4 out of the 5 council members say they would rather invest city resources in expanding our current city events rather than adding new events. And so we felt like this is something where we could make some progress on. We have consensus, generally speaking, on principle. We have some questions, and maybe we can vet that out a little bit. First was, are we talking about taking current features that we have in city events and making them bigger and grander, or are we talking about adding features to city events, or both?
I don't think I was the 20% on this one. I was supportive of the expanding our existing events and enhancing them. But for me, I think it's both. I think that taking the features that you guys have put so much effort and thought into and adding to them or expanding them makes a whole lot of sense, because you guys know what works, you guys know what draws in a crowd and everything. But then if there are ways to enhance them and add new concepts to it each year, if we plan ahead, like, the pumpkin walk, last minute features added, that probably was a headache for you guys, but getting those in long term, I think were good additions.
Yes.
I just think more planning and foresight with those makes sense to me. So kind of both is what I think.
Well, and that's kind of the discussion that I want. We can bring new things, and then like our 5K that we did, start out small. You can do better and grow and make those bigger and better. But I think what's kind of held us back, and I talked to Lisa about this last year, is to get these things and to be able to do it, it costs money. It does. I know that you don't believe it, but it does. And that's the hardest part, is because we've always been told, like even with Heritage Days, you got this money, but you gotta make that money to be able to use that money. And so it's really hard to bring in those good entertainment, to do things that's gonna bring the community out, and to add these things which you want prizes and things to do. If we're always in the back of our mind being like, hey, I have to sell this many booths and I have to get this many sponsors to make it happen. And I think the council just needs to really think about that. We can do bigger and better and think that, but we have to have the support of the council to do that.
Well, and for instance, when we have illumination, I think it's about $20,000 worth of funded fireworks, which makes it a magnificent display.
And that was an amazing show.
amazing.
And for the record, yours was an amazing show too.
Okay, but
Yeah.
that one was amazing. That
That was
they told us $100,000 to do that show.
They spent $100,000.
For the
To
with
do,
fireworks.
oh, but it was, because you had him
Quite a
come
show.
in and he did it for free.
Oh,
for
yeah,
himself.
yeah.
He got the discount.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know we raised 20,000
you
for
raised
the
20.
actual
This
fireworks.
year,
But
but-
he came back,
100,000. and
he gave
Wow.
back and told us, if you were to do that exact
It would
show
be
for City
100.
Vow, it could be up to $80,000 to $100,000 is what he said.
Wow.
So-
I will say our-
Hey,
I asked him, I'm like, that was
No
wonderful.
slouch.
Yeah,
And he's like, yeah, that would be $100,000.
yeah, he did,
And
they did a great
you're
job. I
right,
think,
though,
over a
because
pound or-
our volunteers alone
Yeah.
would probably have to be paid for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I was gonna say, the difference was it was a big difference in how much money you had. And I remember too, talking to you when you said, well, we can get one fire dancer,
Yeah.
but two is a more fascinating
Yeah.
event, but it's more expensive.
Yeah, but if it's a little more expensive for two, but then you have more people that come
Yeah.
because it's more of a show and then
I
they
think
buy
that's-
stuff from, you know what I mean? It's like,
That's the point.
Well, that's what we're
and the
trying
thing
to
is,
say.
like you and I talked about,
Yeah, invest. If you guys want
Yeah.
that and it's so
Parks
important.
and Rec
invest
is
in it.
literally a city's mental health department, pretty much. Like all the stuff you guys put on is what people engage in for their mental health as citizens, like outdoors in the events that we have and stuff like that. And it's kind of, what are you willing to put into that to help our citizens just be a little happier?
But I agree. I think, first of all, you're doing an amazing job.
Yes.
The things that I've heard that we could probably do a little better with is coordinating with Antelope Island, like maybe try and do, like we have the pumpkin walk. We usually have the moon ride around the same time.
That one's usually in
That's
July.
Or, oh yeah, sorry, the July with that one. That's the round.
Roundup.
It's the
Roundup,
roundup.
yeah. So if we could try and coordinate those events to try and make that part of everything. I also love the idea you had of the zombie walk run.
Oh, that'd
That
be
wasn't
fun.
my idea. I think that was.
Don't, I didn't have that idea.
Oh,
Somebody
okay.
did.
Dreamed that.
Somebody wanted to
I
parade.
was somebody internally. I swear I've talked to you about it. No, but I love the zombie 5K where you have one group start as normal runners and you have a second group start as zombies.
That'd be funny.
I thought that sounded awesome. And
Haunted trail or, yeah.
and then, yeah, like a haunted trail, but yes, I love it. And I thought the ROI out of the prizes for the haunted houses this year, I think the only mistake we made is we should have judged it a week earlier so we could get them out. Like I went to all the houses in Roy just because they had them out and we wanted to go look at them all.
But I
And
mean, a more foresight and everything would give them time to get like. the
yes, we
mapping.
need to not tell them, hey, by the way, next month, let's do this.
So what we've talked
mapping
about,
And the cool thing about haunted.
planning is huge.
Yes.
It's come January, we're gonna sit down and make, so that we meet with the people that are with the Heritage Days and with Pumpkin Walk and Easter egg hunt and all these different ones. That we can kind of talk, you guys have some ideas and we can plan.
Where do they
and grow
plug in?
Where they plug in, and so we can start,
More
it's-
eggs.
Yeah,
So-
more eggs, more than 30,000, we can do it.
So to draw this,
Eggs.
so to draw this back to the real question, which is, do you want to have some of these events grow from within, meaning the same lineup, just bigger? Or do you want to add to the lineup? Like, do you want to add things along with Pumpkin Walk? Do you want to add things along with Heritage Days that we're not doing? Or do you just want the things that we are doing to be bigger?
Both.
I think I would prefer to
Which is
do,
your emphasis? Which would you?
I think for the pumpkin walk, I think we can do just a few more, like we should make the the haunted house thing every year. And I think we should also look in doing the 5K. It's that October is usually a decent time for that kind of stuff.
Early October, you're warm enough.
So adding additional things to couple with the event.
Yes, and the only other thing I've heard requested is if we can somehow integrate like a horse. I've heard Halloween parade a lot. But also horse games with our Founders Day events.
We need Ichabod Crane to come right.
We've done that. We've done that and there's, and when
They have
Jack and
a,
those
they
guys,
have
they do like
they have a play day out there during
yeah,
Heritage.
we do a jackpot.
Yeah.
We've coordinated
I
with
went
them.
to it
It's
this
just,
year. Yeah.
it's just some years they don't want to do it, some years they do, and
It's
I'll
two
tell
different,
you,
different groups do it.
I don't know
right?
if you
The
guys
Sheriff
were
Coffee and the.
here when we first started, because I came from a small town, so I wanted something like that out there. And we did like mutton busting and some different games. But it's very difficult if you don't have sheep around here to get those.
Yeah.
And
So-
we ran up like 6 sheep and people like, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
This is my area of expertise. I got a guy for
So-
everything when it comes down.
So the things I've heard is they said you take two, like especially with the kids, you do 2 kids with a clothespin on the end of a pole and you put a strip of like paper between them, like toilet paper, and they race along the field. And if they can get to the other end, fastest time to get to the other end with the paper still intact. They said that's a popular one.
So many kids would fall on their face out there.
And I think you have to look at, because what we did when we did it before was, now that we're getting BMX, we're gonna get some parking and stuff out there. But there was not parking. We had so many people from everywhere come to that, and it's just not facilitated. We didn't have the bleachers. We didn't. So you really got to think of all of those things
Yeah.
that you need before you do an event. And you never want to do an event and then it be a
And have
flop.
it be poor because then.
Yeah,
then word gets out,
especially with
that's
the
a bad thing.
redesigned parking and the trailer parking they're about to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we definitely can look at that. I would say probably not this year until we get all
Yeah.
that kind of settled.
Might be
Okay.
able to do a Heritage Days Cup to BMX park.
Yeah.
We've had an offer for a guy who does arena building just to come out without charge to see what it would take to update that arena and give us kind of an idea to where we could outsource bids when the time comes. But he can make a list for us of what that arena would need to be like at least profitable to the city.
Well, and we could even add something at BMX Park where the kids do a Halloween bike ride, you know, dress up in their costumes and gives them an opportunity to dress up and maybe they decorate their, yeah, well,
our pump
that would
track.
be really
Horse
good.
people love decorating their horses for holidays.
Do they really?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
That would be really
Yeah, they're
cool.
usually done
You can
by
put a
then,
costume
but
on your
I think you
pony.
could get.
My goal is for
Yeah.
Syracuse to own Halloween.
I would agree. We could, we could.
Well, we already kind of do at the pumpkin walk. I mean, I remember when that started. I think I was here the very first year and it was, you know, a smattering of them and it was great. But look what you've turned it into. I mean, we
Amazing.
can
Yeah.
own Halloween.
Yeah, I'm committed as far as like the resources to grow these events with, you know, commensurate with the growth of the city and then also integrating extra
I am too.
things as they come along. But obviously we'd have to wait at one level.
I do think that I would like to prioritize things. I think Heritage Days, there are so many competitive, every city does it.
Mhm.
So I don't think that we need to, we do so much for Heritage Days. Every day is packed. I would rather spend more of our features on Halloween.
I agree.
Or something that we haven't really
We need black
expanded.
wreaths for
as
the
much.
clock tower.
I still think our Easter event is like the.
And
the
Easter.
event around.
And
here.
that
Nobody
would be,
does
so like
Easter
Easter and Halloween
Are
are like
like
something bigger. or
I think you got a
extra.
second
Right.
vote on that one.
or cowbells.
I like that Easter and Halloween, making those really big Syracuse events.
I do think we need to look at, this year with Christmas was like our first year of doing it with the Arts Council and ended up turning out really good. They did a thing, we did a
Yeah,
thing
that was
along, we did
awesome.
donuts and hot chocolate and stuff, but I think we do need to look at, people are always complaining that we are
We
not
need more
festive
lights.
enough.
Like a tree lighting ceremony
Yeah,
would
like
be.
something, but we're gonna have to purchase something that we can use year to year and like do some decorating and stuff at City
I
Hall.
hear we have
Why don't
an
we
ice
just-
skating rink.
Can't we just plant a tree that just keeps growing? Like in one of our parks that we would light it at, and we can buy spruce and plant it?
KFC lot.
Yeah.
But that, stuff like that,
Create that.
it does cost quite a bit. We
Yeah.
priced it out
A lot of
before.
money.
I mean,
So
every
it
year
costs
it'll
a lot of
be
money,
bigger,
but
Well,
the little stuff
chicken
that we're
buckets
doing to
and
grow the Christmas.
Can I just say,
Too
I
bad.
do love the moving.
When we planted this, that was like a good size already. J&J would have, I bet.
We get one.
Sorry, go ahead.
conversation going.
I do think.
Don't you have a gavel?
I want it said now, I'd like an Ichabod crane to roam the city. Wouldn't that be a fun,
You bet.
and like Santa
One vote
does
against
at
it.
Christmas? Oh, it's worse.
Against it.
We've already got that Michael Myers guy that walks around.
That is too funny though.
That's my neighbor.
Is it?
So, I would just ask if you guys have some ideas, just to email me. We're not gonna do every single one of them,
No.
but we would like to
Send
see
idea.
kind of what.
Your idea though,
Your
Chris,
interests
about
are.
like the committee's meeting.
Yeah,
You know, just
All
getting
together.
a focus.
Right.
Early on in these.
Great.
Because again,
Well, we're all assigned to one of these events.
then we can go, then we can actually
the
say to you, like,
budget
this would
that-
really help me if you can help us to do that.
Identifying what the cost. of
Okay,
things is
so
gonna be.
I'm gonna say this, then this year, after we make assignments, because we may rotate some of the event assignments,
I'm keeping mine.
we will get early meetings, so before the budget's final, so that we can talk about this and we can respond to this in the budget.
Great.
I'm keeping mine too, but I hijacked
Okay,
his also, and
now
I'm gonna add in a minute.
I jumped in on all of them. so-
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna move us on to, we have to talk a little bit about
We
upcoming
just kinda joined
projects.
together, actually.
So I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure was aware before we get into the full budget is you need to kind of have an idea of some of the upcoming expenses the city is going to face or could possibly face. So I asked Brody to put together a little bit of kind of some of the impending expenses we know we have, just as an overview.
Okay. Got it.
What? Gigawatts. Gigawatt.
All these buttons I have to push. All right.
I don't know what, I was just finishing his line. I don't know what it was.
Okay, so we've got possible upcoming major projects that we wanted to bring to your attention. Just so that as we go into our budget season, you have kind of like this global view of what's floating out there, of what we might need to make decisions on. So these are things we've identified as possibilities. Some of them we may not be able to avoid. And then some of them have a little bit more discretionary elements to them. So second fire station, which we've discussed, in order to maintain our service levels throughout the city, that's probably one that we're going to have to just deal with. Is debt required for that? Most likely, yes. We'll have to bond at least for a portion of it. Then we've got land that we would like to secure while there still is land available for a possible third fire station. We've identified this as a kind of a long-term scenario. You've seen the studies we've done. We don't need to build the station right now, but the idea is to secure a space for when we do. That one, you could use some debt funding if needed. But the cost range for that we're looking at somewhere between $600,000 and $900,000 for the land. We've got acquire UDOT surplus for our strategic economic development efforts. We're going to talk a little bit about that in closed session tonight. But we've got options. We've got an economic development plan. The city does. And in order to achieve some of those objectives, we have the opportunity to kind of take matters into our own hands to help, bring those goals to a reality. We currently have a bond on a culinary water tower that we just built a couple of years ago. Our plan shows that we will pretty soon need another one of the same size. And that depends on how fast the growth comes. But I think the projection right now is maybe 2025.
Right.
That'll be here sooner than we know.
Growth kind of tapering.
Might be 26 or 27. Yeah. So it kind of depends on how fast the demand comes, but it's out there, and that's the last one was $6 million. We think this one will probably be 8 or 10 because of inflation. Will bonding be required? Yes. but that gets funded out of the water fund, right? And well, second, culinary impact fees mostly. Then we've got, I mentioned earlier today, in order to plan for future parks, we've got the opportunity or the need to buy land for to build future parks. That just depends on the size of the land. You know, it could be 1 million, could be 5 million. Well, we've had discussions about the museum expansion. They've talked to us. Kind of the ballpark figure was in the $500,000 to $800,000 range. So there would be, you know, possibility for expanding that. And then actual development of parks so that they're usable, right? So we talked about regional parkland. You know, we could spend upwards of, you know, it's not 30 million anymore, that's for sure. You know, but we could do a phase to where it's only a few million. You know, $1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you're talking about some real money. So on the right side of the sheet here, you'll see I've got it's important to know the funding sources for each of these projects because some of them are restricted. And so you can't just use some money for some projects. The general fund is almost universal. You can use it for most things. Same with the capital fund. You'll see in the gray there, that's our existing fund balance that we would have available to work with out of each of those funds. And then that's lined up with the projects that would be eligible to use in each of those funds. So, for example, the fire station, we've got our public safety impact fee fund or our capital fund that we could use, but we can't use park impact fee, obviously, or RAP tax for any of those. So that's what that's there for you to look at. We just wanted to bring this to your attention and see if, well, let me finish off here. We just so you have an idea of our existing debt. So we've got the municipal buildings that we have today. The payoff year for that is 2028. There's about 5 million left on that bond. The culinary water tanks, I mentioned before, about 5 million. Payoff year is 2030. And then the secondary water reservoir, which we discussed tonight, we're looking at a 2037 payoff year. So that's where we sit on that. So we want to kind of give you a global idea here. And if there's any discussion.
Secondary water, isn't that a culinary water reservoir? Oh, no, sorry.
The reservoir.
So I'm thinking tower.
Yeah, the
Which is the one above.
Yeah, the tank's culinary, the reservoir
I
secondary.
confused myself.
So we also want to see if there's any discussion on, you know, what you see as maybe where we should focus as we start to put this upcoming budget together. If there's a direction on some of these where you want to.
Doesn't have to be decided tonight, but if you have some feelings you want to bring forward for the building of the budget.
I think that second fire station, like it's listed first, and I think it takes first priority to me as well.
Yeah.
Because I know that even 4 years ago when I started, I talked to Aaron about needing another one, and you told me then what the response time was for that east side, and it was, you were concerned 4 years ago. It'll
That's the
only
only one
get,
people die if we don't do it immediately, or at least.
that one has actual, yeah, so that one does take priority. in my
Well, and
mind.
there's a new business coming online in a hospital that will require that it gets serviced by our ambulance service, so. It brings that forward even more.
Yeah, we probably were looking at building that second station, you know, maybe 3 or 4 more years out. But with the hospital.
Do we have a completion date on that?
I think the hospital is expected to be operating next year in the ER.
I mean, they
Just
built
the
that
ER.
Layton one on Layton Parkway in no time
Yeah,
Yeah, they said 5 years for the rest of the hospital.
for the whole
but
thing.
We have a site plan application for the first
So
emergency room, which is like I want to say it's like a 4,000.
with that being an emergency room, we're gonna have a lot more once you have the hospital, you'll have fewer transports.
They transport out a lot, yeah.
Think so?
In and out.
Once you have a cardiac specialist wing.
Okay, so we're not talking about the hospital, we're talking about any other, I mean, I agree with you. The second fire station is coming forward fast. I think that depending on those who respond to business interest, our second water tank might come faster. Because there have been business inquiries that would take a significant amount of water.
Like what?
Well, we had
Data center.
The what? I'm sorry.
A data
data center.
Okay.
Requires a large amount of water we couldn't produce, so that might come forward.
Is that's not consistently new replenishment of water, isn't it just that they have water and it's recycled? Isn't that?
I
how
believe so,
it
cooled
goes?
and
They
recycled
may
through.
recycle it a few times, but they have to dump it out.
Can we find out?
So, man,
No, that's what they told us.
yeah,
They can recycle.
and unless in the last 3 years, they've come up with new technologies.
Once you've heated the water, it's no
Technology's
longer
gotten
cooling
more
your equipment.
advanced.
Isn't there a way
Crazy
to
how that works.
do?
An air conditioner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some kind of
Cooling towers.
There's got to be some.
Well, they do
There
cooling
is,
towers in the
it's
data
even more
centers down there.
Which,
Is it
but
vinyl?
with us being in a drought,
I don't know.
it might. be-
Anyway.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility for water.
There's a possibility that could push forward. That's all we need to know at this point.
Okay.
So anyway, I think at least you're aware of what that is. So I'm going to give us a 5-minute recess. Just 5 minutes, because I'd like to get into. the
Can I ask
rest
a
of the
question real quick?
Yeah.
Where does the sales tax go to when we get it, at like a quarterly or whatever? What fund does it go into? Okay. I think you got answered it. Thank you.
Okay, do we need a 5-minute break? We just want to
Yeah.
go right into
Yeah,
closed session?
yes, please.
I'd probably do it 3.
All right.
What are you, military?
There
you go.
Attention span is waning. Where's the goodies, Brody?
Let's not set that expectation.
It was supposed to be for the retreat.
I
do have some goodies without the coffee.
Or.
How about the nuts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're only.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to change it. What they do. Otherwise, we'd have to change twice. Or we at least run the risk of changing twice. Are we ready to go?
Yep. We're good.
Okay, we're good. So at this point, I will take a motion to move into closed session.
I so move.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are moving into closed session. You need to close the doors.